Planning Board. Danielle, would you please read the statement of adequate notice?
In accordance with Chapter 231, PL 1975, the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as required, specifying the time and location, with such notice as being sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Times of Trenton, posted on the Municipal Public Notice Meeting Bulletin Board, and filed with the Township Clerk.
Thanks. Would everyone please stand and join us for a flag salute? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Chairman, I just have hopefully the past 5 minutes of the board's time before you start your application.
Yeah, could we, we'll do that in the public comment?
No, just
Oh.
5 minutes of your time, that's all I need.
You have the floor.
I would like to change protocol.
so that.
Let's get the roll call, so
we know
we have the, go ahead, Danielle.
Chairman Newman,
Yes.
Mr. Pato,
Yes.
Committeeman Ziner,
Present.
Committeewoman Zabrowski. Here. Mr. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Lambros,
Here.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Ms. Sinha,
Yes.
and for the record, Mr. Coffey and Mr. Perino are absent.
Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Al Farrell, Mayor of Millstone Township, and I thought it was important enough to come before the board and take 5 minutes of your time and just commend 2 people on the board for their extended service of time, both Chairman Mitch Newman and Vice Chairman Chris Pepe. They've been on this board for over 20 years. They faithfully executed the job that they've done, volunteering day in and day out, not just at the board meetings, but off-site, reviewing applications, discussing things. And this town is the way it is because of these people and this body. And I just want to commend your volunteerism and your service and dedication to Millstone. And I thought it was important enough for me to come out and address the board and say a heartfelt thank you for everything that you guys do, and the rest of you as well. Mr. Cato, Mr. Beck, Jeff, you've been on for how long?
Not much.
Yeah, he's getting there.
I think I got 20 coming up in a couple of years.
Mr. Lambert, so everybody here has tenure, and this is why Millstone is the way it is because these people are passionate about what they do. And again, I just want to say thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Team effort, that's for sure. Okay.
It's appreciated.
And there's some good
Thank
jokes
you.
in there, Mitch, come on. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no,
a good
I-
comedy show,
I
actually.
let them all go.
Have a good night.
All right, good
Thank
night.
you.
All right, we'll save those for later. All right, so now otherwise, we're open for public comment. If anyone else would like to approach the board, particularly if anyone would like to compliment me or Chris on anything, your time. Seeing none, I'll take that under advisement. No one's complimenting us on anything else. So next up on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our February 22nd meeting. Would someone like to make a motion for those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or suggested revisions? Seeing none, Danielle, please call the roll.
Chairman Newman,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Pato,
Yes.
Committeewoman Zabrowski.
Yes.
Committeeman Ziner,
Yes.
Mr. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Lambros,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is memorialization of a resolution for 37 Burnt Tavern LLC, Block 57, Lot 17.04. Would someone like to make a motion to move that resolution? I'll make the motion to move the resolution. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. Any comment or suggested revision? Seeing none, Danielle, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chairman Pato,
Yes.
Committeewoman Ziner,
Yes.
Committeewoman Zabrowski. Mr. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Lambros,
That was the resolution for Hexa?
No.
Oh, the minutes.
Burn Tavern.
Oh, Burnt Tavern? I voted against that application, didn't I? No.
to Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
and Chairman Newman.
Yes. Okay. All right, thank you. Next on our agenda under applications, the first item is request to reconsider and reopen the application, Hexa Builders, LLC. Is there someone here on behalf of the applicant? Okay, Mr. Junko?
Mr. Chairman, John Junko, Giordano, Heller, and Cecil, appearing on behalf of the applicant. The applicant has requested the board to consider, continue to consider the application Since the last meeting, we have delivered to the board and Mr. Stodd a report on the status of all of the conditional approvals that are required for the resolution. And they're all filed at this point, and that outline, if you will, describes their status. I would request the board reconsider the denial vote and permit the applicant additional time to complete the process, and perhaps consider that if a substantial portion of these are completed, that while we're left with TWA, which is the sewer transition approval, and the sewer approvals and the acceptance of the expansion of the sewer service area, I would ask that the board could consider that, given that those permits can be issued and then the actual, or would be granted, but the actual issuance relies on publication in the NJDEP register, that perhaps those could be considered as acceptable conditions.
Okay. Mike, this is a little bit interesting, so would you want to give us your perspective?
Yes, this matter was on in January, and it was on for final approval. There were a number of loose ends that had not been connected yet, a number of I's not dotted, T's not crossed, because there were still outstanding approvals that were in process, and the board did not feel comfortable voting on final application with all of those threads untied at this point. The applicant at that point in time asked the board to proceed. They wanted to vote, and the board felt that they could not vote to approve with all of those open ends. The applicant has now come and said, you know what, we think maybe we were going to ask you to reconsider that. We'd like to dot those I's, cross those T's, tie up those loose ends, and then come back with an application that this board can look at and say, yes, this is definitely an approvable application. So that's what they're asking for tonight. I spoke with Mr. Junko earlier today, and we actually received a response on Monday. I prepared a list of probably 29 or 30 items that were outstanding, some of which have to be post-approval because you just can't get them until post-approval, like a developer's agreement, that kind of thing. But a bunch of them that are, pre-approval kinds of items. They responded with advising that they've submitted new plans, that a lot of those things have been taken care of now, but those plans were just recently submitted. Our professionals haven't had a chance to review that, to confirm that one way or the other. And there are a couple of approvals that they indicated they expected to be forthcoming sometime in April. We discussed that perhaps what the board would want to do is reopen the case this evening, not set a continuation date, but the applicant would grant an extension of time to act until they're ready with all their updated plans, and then we would have them back at that point, at which point they would have to re-notify for the meeting.
And at that point, the board would then be, the applicant, I assume, would request the board to make a decision perhaps consistent with what Mr. Junko said.
I'm sure they would.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask the opportunity to mention, to bring to the board the completion of the substantial, this is the report of the 30 items that Mr. Stodd raised, and there's only 2 that I think would take past. I don't expect April, I would think a bit later than that, but I think it will be somewhere towards the end of the summer, and still waiting for the DEP to publish in the register. So when that comes up, I would like to ask your permission to submit to your consultants an updated report of each of the approvals, and if those 2 are open, ask perhaps an informal consideration whether we could come back for that approval.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing, that while you're working to wrap things up, stay in contact with our professionals, and I'd appreciate it if you collectively pick the next date when you're coming back, so that there can be some kind of consensus to support your position.
I think that's certainly reasonable, and They're very hard to work with. Not at all. Easy access, and we've been in touch throughout, and quite responsive, so that would be perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, so tonight's charge, Mike, as I understand it, would, is there anything else from the applicant before I
That's
jump back?
pretty much our story. I think we've made a good submission in terms of the status update.
Okay. So Mike, as I understand it, the charge for the board would be a motion to reconsider the application in the context of withdrawing the denial and reopening the application, understanding that the applicant will come back at a later date and re-present their final approval request, subject to their presentation as to the status of the conditions at that time. Is that
That's absolutely correct.
okay? So I'll make that motion rather than have Tom repeat it. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all right, you got 2 seconds, that's like 4. Any further discussion or conversation? Seeing
So
none?
I just have a question. This is for Attorney Stott. If we voted tonight against Mitch's, if Mitch's motion went down, you know, it was denied, would that mean that the application in total was denied, including the preliminary?
It would be a denial of final approval. For final
Final
approval.
approval,
And-
as
and-
it
and you
was
would-
presented.
And in January, yes.
So all
So
we're
it would
doing
be-
now is we're opening the application so he can submit a new final approval, if I'm
Correct.
understanding that correctly.
Okay.
What's that, Jeff? I'm
Correct.
sorry?
You're right.
So all we're doing is we're opening up the application, so at some future date, he can reapply for a final approval.
Okay.
If
So-
we vote no for it, where does it leave the applicant?
It leaves the applicant with the denial. The board will have to adopt a resolution for denial, which I actually have already drafted, but did not submit to the board because I thought that we would probably be likely to be moving forward on
On
this
my
basis.
guidance to Mike, I thought we would give this conversation its respect. And if the board felt differently, then Mike's resolution would be considered at the next meeting. But, and I'm jumping in, I'm sorry, but considering this is sensitive because it's involved affordable housing, which has value in a number of respects, obviously I made the motion, so I feel comfortable in how I would
Yeah.
like to proceed.
So all we're doing here at the end of the day is that he's able to refile for a final. And at that point, we could analyze it and determine an up or down at that point, once it's been resubmitted.
Correct.
Correct.
So almost basically what we did last meeting, correct? When they came and presented before us again?
Correct, as
But
Mike
it would
said,
be a new-
we
Okay.
weren't
It'll be a
ready at
new
the
final
point, but the
application.
applicant had the right to request a vote, which they did.
Right.
And now there's a different game plan, which is, these things happen.
Yep.
So if Mitch's motion was denied or voted down, would that affect the preliminary approval that they received?
Well, it does, because you denied the final.
It
so-
voids
Okay,
it.
I get you.
The entire application goes away.
Okay.
Well, and the motion is not addressing that issue.
Right.
That's a legal
Okay,
question.
I just wanted clarity.
Okay. All right, so I have the motion, we have a second. Any further consideration or conversation? Seeing none, Danielle, please call the roll.
Just a little note, we didn't require notice on this final, and so they may not be noticing unless there's a substantial change on that.
No, because we're not setting a new date, so we can't carry notice.
There's no notice on this, it was just final?
No.
No.
There would, understood. But if there are substantial changes,
Right,
it'll have to be.
understood.
That'll be part of the ongoing conversation with our
May or may not
professionals and
require
Mr.
notice.
Junko. Yeah, they'll make the right decision at that time.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Pato?
Yes.
Committeeman Ziner?
Yes.
Committeewoman Zabrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
No.
And Chairman Newman?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Good night. Next up is second application for this evening, JLE LLC, Block 20, Lot 3.13. Is there someone here on behalf of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, this is a continuation hearing.
Moving target's harder to hit.
Well, and I think that we've received some new exhibits. Danielle, I'm not sure what exhibit we left off at the last hearing. I have a copy of your sheet, but it doesn't have the last hearing date. So, new exhibits that we received are A79, which is a berm and sound barrier exhibit consisting of one sheet, prepared by Midlantic Engineering Partners, dated February 9, 2024. Exhibit A80 is an AIL sound wall product guide. Exhibit A81 is an acoustical analysis executive summary prepared by Ostergaard Acoustical Associates. That's dated February 23, 2024. And Exhibit A82 is an extension of time to act through the end of March. I thought we were through April, though.
And I thought it was through May. I'll start by placing on the record the applicant grants this board an extension of time to complete deliberations and take formal action through the end of May 2024.
And those are the additional exhibits that the board has received in connection with the application, with the exception of PB8B, which appears to be the board acoustic engineer's review dated March 4, 2024.
PB3E, the planner's review dated 3/6/23.
Got it. PB3E, planner's review dated 3/6/23. Those are the new exhibits that the board has received. Mr. Pape is here on behalf of the applicant.
So before we begin, can I ask a question? Are we going to hear from another sound engineering expert?
Mr. Pape.
Surely, Mr. Chair.
You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good evening. Kenneth Pape of the firm Heilbert Pape on behalf of your applicant. We do have a new sound expert, and you have a sound expert. Your sound expert was hired last fall, being paid by the escrow account. And so he is here this evening, and how you choose to call him or not is your pleasure. But we also have Ben Muller, who is our sound expert, and he did the new report that was reviewed by your sound expert.
Okay. So why don't you run through your game plan for this evening,
Sure.
and then we'll figure it out together.
Very fine, thank you. So this is the sixth public hearing on this matter. The 6 public hearings have been over a little more than a year. The last time we were before you was in October. In October, there was considerable discussion about the sound that was sound testimony presented by Mr. Dottie. A most unfortunate situation occurred shortly after that meeting when we were informed that Mr. Dottie had let his license expire. Mr. Dottie had gotten his license some 45 years ago, and he had allowed it to expire. He was no longer an engineer in good standing, and we had no choice but to abandon him as our sound expert, notwithstanding his lengthy tenure and his credentials. We were very fortunate that we found Ben Muller, who is with Ostergaard Acoustical Associates, and we retained him to essentially start from the beginning and do the entire analysis again. So he's not relying on anybody's work product but his own. Prior to his undertaking his report, or his investigation and then issuing a report, your expert had issued a letter in November outlining requirements for a sound study, and that letter was presented to us. There were meetings with your sound expert to understand it, and then Mr. Ben Muller undertook to be responsive to it. What we would like to do this evening, with your permission, is the following. Initially, I will call Louis Zugner, the design engineer, for the sole purpose of introducing the sound wall that will be the basis of Mr. Muller's testimony, just so that everyone can see it on the plan. Mr. Zugner will remain available later in the evening. If the opportunity is there, we'll do a summation, a summary of the revisions that have been made over the past year in response to the board or the board's professionals' requests. The order of witnesses would be Louis, followed by Mr. Ben Muller, then your expert, if that's the direction of the board. Mr. Zugner would then return to assist in doing the over presentation, and the last witness that's scheduled is Allison Coffin, the professional planner, to address the variance relief. And that's the procedure we would like to follow with your permission.
There was one other item that I thought came up, and of course I put a light strip in my mouth before I start talking, so. One other item came up that I recall that I thought the applicant was going to address regarding the potential truck U-turns on 33, trucks that wanted to go east.
There was a letter report that was prepared by Jay Troutweiler that indicated that that intersection could handle 2 tractor trailers going through it at the same time. That was submitted to the board some time ago.
Okay.
Every professional witness who testified is with us this evening. Scott Kennel and Jay Troutweiler from the same firm. Scott Kennel is here from that firm. He's the traffic expert. Louis is the engineer. Ray Walker, Dr. Ray Walker, the environmental scientist who previously testified, is here. Steve Radasti, our architect, and Allison Coffin, who has not yet testified.
Okay.
Also, I'm remiss. I have the privilege of representing Mr. Ming Kong, and Mr. Kong has come to the meetings, and I have not introduced him to you. I would just like to take one moment to tell you, Mr. Ming Kong, who's seated behind me, is the property owner. He purchased this property back in, I think it was about 1997, and shortly after that we came to the zoning board. At the time, the golf center was not a permitted use, and the golf center was approved, and Mr. Kong has operated it since that time. And Mr. Kong came to our country from Indonesia about 1979. Came to this country to continue his education. He was involved in the computer and IT industry for some time, and then followed his passion into golf. The golf center didn't make it through the pandemic. But I was just remiss to have Mr. Kong sitting in the room and not introduce him to you.
Okay, thank you.
So with your permission, I would like to call Mr. Louis Zugner. He's a professional engineer. His credentials are on the record. And either Mr. Stibe or I can remind him that he's under oath. I'm just going to ask him to present to the board the location of the sound attenuation wall. That'll be the discussion of Mr. Muller.
Okay, but any questions as to the effectiveness of that wall will hold for your acoustics expert?
I think so, yes. And you're acoustics expert.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Right, just want to make sure the focus for the board is
Yeah.
to see the location and
See the
understand the
location.
dimensions.
That's it. While he's setting up, I sent correspondence into the board. Mr. Kong is the contract purchaser of the 2 single-family residences on Dugan's Grove Road. Those 2 residences are were 2 of the residences that the board was concerned about the sound coming from the site onto them. They are zoned highway commercial. They are not zoned residential. So there is a real value to owning those properties, and Mr. Kong negotiated and entered into firm contracts to buy those. It is not contingent on anything that you do here with this, but there is a commitment that they'll be purchased, the homes will be removed, and any future use would be a use that is non-residential, consistent with the highway commercial uses.
I'm sorry, are those lots part of this application?
No, no.
Okay.
Do you intend to have those lots merged into this property?
Can't merge them, or could merge them in, but there's 2 different zones, Mr. Ziner. They're just like Mr. Kong owns other properties along the road. That the zone switched. It's highway commercial along Dugan's Grove, and then behind it
It's PCD.
is PCD. So, no, they make a very nice parcel that could they make a very nice 9-acre parcel altogether.
Just want to reserve a question for you, Mike. So at some point, I'll get to the question of how do we accept representations on adjacent lots? We don't have to deal with it for the moment, but it's just rattling around in my head if it's not technically part of the application.
What's rattling around in my head is that I don't think you can, because it's not part of this application, so how can you impose conditions on property that is not part of the application?
Right, and that's my concern is, Mr. Papel, I appreciate the representation. I want to be careful that we don't rely on it necessarily. You know, we heard you say it, and you're certainly credible, but we just got to be careful how we deal with that fact.
Well, it was just for our information, right?
I will, and the applicant has placed it before you, it's on the record, it is a commitment that can be acknowledged, and you have a commitment from the applicant. You can indicate that that it was an important consideration to you. I mean, these are receptors, residential receptors, and we're making the commitment that the residential receptors will be removed.
Okay. Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Zugner, if Mr. Zugner is a professional engineer, as I've indicated, he's under oath. I remind you that you're under oath, your credentials have been shared with the board. If you could introduce the exhibits that you came with, the wall exhibit that you came with this evening, please.
Certainly. Good evening. This is, when we submitted, it was in the package that was submitted, was the berm and sound wall exhibit. It was a plan, an engineering plan. This is simply a colored version. It's a little bit easier to read. This is entitled Berm and Sound Wall Rendering. It is dated today, March
May 83.
If you could take a few moments to describe what portion of the property this is, and describe the location of the sound attenuation wall system.
Certainly. So we worked with the sound expert, Mr. Ben Muller, to develop this plan that you see before you. If you'll recall a little bit, you can see in this rendering, not just point, but we talked before, this is the bottom right of the building. We constructed berms along here. In this plan also, there's berming in front of this basin, so the two ends, we were able to capture berms in both of those two ends along the frontage. And then in white, you can see this is the area we're looking specifically at. A combination of heights. This is the sound attenuation barrier. And the thicker white line for the majority of it. This is a 16-foot sound wall, acoustically rated boards. They look like sort of wood boards that go into like a tall fence. The section coming down the left hand of this board, sort of parallel to our entry drive, we've called that a fence. This is also acoustically engineered material, but it didn't need to be as tall in that location, so creating something that looked like a fence there as opposed to the rest of the sound wall aesthetically seemed like the right way to go. I'll remind the board, I think we talked about this some before, you know, as you come up from 33, this sort of crest at a ridge, we've built these berms, and this sound wall runs along essentially a ridge, so in terms of height and effect, it's placed where it's very effective in terms of attenuating sound. It's not just randomly placed. That was picked because it follows that ridge line. This product intent is to be like a neutral color. So if you can see right along our property line, and these are tree symbols loaded in there. There are existing trees, some on our property at the property line and some off the property. Proposal would be that all of that area in front of the wall we would add landscaping to supplement those trees, so that if you were essentially looking at this wall, you have existing trees, there would then be landscaping, and then as a neutral color to obscure, the trees obscure it, and then it's a neutral color, hopefully it just blends in.
What is that neutral color? Is it tan, is it green, is it, what is it?
Yeah. We have options, and we wanted to, we would want the board's input. The color of the building is in the soft grays. It could be that. It seemed to be, since that was what's behind it, that would be best. But there's also taupe, there's brown, there's
Okay.
charcoal.
And I'm sure the landscape plan has been reviewed by people, but I would kind of like to know about it, and I don't know about it. Can you just tell me what you think you're going to put in front of the wall?
What we had said the
Okay.
last time was
Yep.
that we would not use 6 to 8 evergreens. We would use Hulka type 10 to 16-foot evergreens, and we would use mixed evergreens across the front of the
Okay.
board. And that would be infilled wherever the woods are currently.
Yep.
It would be infilled.
Okay.
One other thing towards the color, and your planner had raised this, this particular product doesn't necessarily come in a fully flat paint, but you do have an option for a wood texture, which as opposed to a flat surface, then wouldn't be shiny or artificial looking. It would be
Okay.
a wood surface, printed.
I think there was one.
The only element I think is, important to note, and is in a few of the different letters, this is 10 feet off the property line. It gives us space to put plantings in there, and again, it's following that ridge line to make it most effective.
Before the sound testimony is placed before, I'll remind the board, there were 3 different areas where we had residential neighbors. The northwest corner we had addressed, and in October, it's on the record indicating we had satisfied the board, and that was using the very substantial berms. So the northwest corner, at the October meeting, you had actually indicated that that was acceptable, and your expert also said it was acceptable. So that is being done with berms and heavy landscaping. There was a request made that from the chair, I believe, that the berms extend further north. There was no reason to stop. We had considerable fill. It was either remove the fill or use it, so the berms go very deep into the property. So the berms and landscaping took care of the northwest corner. The Dugan's Grove Road, the 2 residences, your applicant is agreeing and has entered into contracts to purchase those, and those will be removed. There will not be residents there. What we had left was the boarding house that is behind the restaurant. There's a boarding house that's 19 or 21 apartments, and there's also one of those small buildings alongside the boarding house that I think historically may have been a garage, now seems to have some residents. So this system that we're presenting to you is a system addressing the sound on that boarding house element. I think that's it for the introduction.
For now, that sounds good.
Okay, and then and I look to, whether your sound expert testifies first or ours, I look to you.
I'm thinking I want to hear from the applicant's expert and present your case, so to speak, or position, and then we can react and evaluate from there.
Very fine.
Okay. Does that sound fine?
Works for me.
All right, we'll get you all introduced in a few minutes. All right.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, all right. All right, good. Ken, you
Thank
have the
you.
floor with your expert.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller?
You know what,
No, hold on.
I just want to be proper procedure. So we just heard some testimony from the applicant's engineer regarding a sound wall and some related features. We have been opening it up to the public as each of your witnesses testifies. So if there's any members of the public that have any questions for this specific witness, which was focused obviously on his limited testimony, you can approach the board. And if there's any board questions, we'll entertain those, of course.
Brian Scott, 19 Arrowhead Way. I live, I guess, in the northwestern corner of this map. To my knowledge, didn't think that we came to a solution in the October meeting about the berms being adequate. Per the testimony tonight, seems like I must have missed something. Has the building moved? I know we keep putting these pictures up. Has the building moved in the last, 3 meetings?
It has not.
Has not moved. Okay, so we are still.
But last 3 meetings, the building moved, I think sometime at the August meeting.
Correct, so I'm just making sure this new photo is what we've been looking at for the past couple renderings. So the building is still too close to a residential lot, technically. which is what we're going to be going for a variance.
Well, we haven't heard from the planner yet.
Okay, but this is, I'm just making sure, I just want to make sure that, like, I'm looking at, there's a lot of stuff that's changed since
Part of the relief they're
November.
asking for.
Okay. Will we see the sound wall from our homes?
The sound wall will be in front of the building, behind the restaurant on Route 33.
Okay, so there's no sound wall going up the, I guess from the southwest property line north?
I don't know. There's no sound wall except between this building, the proposed building, and the boarding house restaurant property. It's the only-
Just so we can all be clear, why don't we just point out exactly where it's going to be, so everybody is,
Okay, so there will be, there'll be
understands.
no sound wall along this property line.
None proposed. It was all berms and landscape.
but let's show exactly, can we just touch where it's going to be in the front there? You see, just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. Or it might be easier to see in this architectural drawing, but whatever, everybody can see. Just run your pen if you
I'll show
wouldn't.
on both.
Perfect. Just want to make clear to everybody what we're
So
talking
you can see
about.
the bottom right, Dugan's Grove Road, and it's following from top of this berm down to the property line, along that property line, and down to this point near the long end.
I think it's shown better there with- in white.
More clear, sort of a white line comes down, across the property line, and then down. And then this section is coming down the bottom along the parallel to the entry drive, that's the lower height.
And I just want, because these things are confusing, they really are, and I'm looking at these things for years, as the mayor has pointed out, and sometimes I'm confused. Exactly where's 33, and does everybody know where Dugan's Grove Road is? Just want to make sure everybody's clear. This is a big deal for those residents, so, I want to make sure we're all good. So you can see on the bottom of this thing up on the TV screen, but you can't see it there, but just point it out to everybody.
So it's cut off at the bottom left
Right.
of this picture image. You can see where 33 is running. It continues down along the bottom of what this television screen would show. There's an intersection here, just off the image. Dugan's Grove Road is coming up on the bottom right here.
And just for everybody's reference, where Lucento's used to be, whatever it is now, just touch
Yeah.
that too.
Sure, that's the restaurant.
The restaurant that's right there.
Right there.
That's the very bottom edge of the picture.
I just want you to be comfortable, so, you know what I mean? I want you to know what you're looking at, because it's a big deal to you.
Okay, so there is no sound wall on that property line, so we will not see a sound wall. Do we know what the current status of that wood line is that we're talking is going to, the current wood line, not new landscaping, the current wood line, that you guys continue to say is bolsterous in definition?
Now, the one you're talking about is over by the residence, I take it?
On the residents of Arrowhead Way? Yes.
Okay, just want to be clear. Okay,
That's-
So what is the current condition of that
Yeah.
heavy tree line that we continue to describe as of today?
Yeah, on our property, it's a golf course, and we're going to be building huge berms. Whatever is there is going to be removed so that we can build the huge berms. We're not touching any woods that are off of our property.
Correct. So can we look through what the current landscape is there now? Do we look into the golf course property from our homes?
This is not the testimony that was just placed before
Well,
the
you
board.
just told me that we have heavy
Mr.
tree line there. I live there, this is not heavy tree line. You're telling me that this is heavy tree line. I'm asking what it looks like today. You didn't answer my question. What it looks like today is a bunch of dead trees that I looked through. Here's the photo, if you'd like to look at it.
The statement that thank you.
That's paper thin. I'm going to look right through that.
What the statement, if it was, and I'm not testifying, I'm telling you what's already on the record. We cannot touch the trees that are not on our property. On our property, there's very little in the way of trees because that area is a golf course. Where we're, on our client's property, the proposal is these very large berms. And those berms will be, anything that's there will be removed first, the berms will be built, and then the berms will be landscaped. And the commitment was heavy landscaping. The landscaping would, we indicated not 6 to 8 foot, in that area too, no 6 to 8 foot plantings, all plantings in the 10 to 16 foot, and the plantings would be on the.
And just to be clear, how high is the berm going to be? Let's talk about that.
So we had some detailed discussion on this previously, but In the rear, the peak elevation is 162, which we were doing it relative to both our paved areas at 17 feet above our paved areas, and it's about 15 feet above the adjoining property line, adjoining properties.
Okay, so at the property line for where this gentleman lives, we're gonna have a 15-foot berm, and then on top of that and around it, we're gonna landscape that. So I'm gonna pose to you, because I see your picture, and I think you're right? But if we put a 15-foot high
I
pile
understand
of
that.
dirt,
I'm just making sure that
No,
they're saying
no,
that there's
I-
a lot going on there.
I'm with
There's
you.
not.
I'm with you.
On their
That's-
property, I know they're gonna do a lot. But
Yeah.
they keep saying that there's already stuff there.
But let me ask you a question. Do you think if we put a 15-foot berm and landscape it, wherever it is, in that tree area or on the golf course side, is that good enough for you? What do you think?
No, I'm a landscaper. No, I'm gonna see right through it.
You're gonna see,
And
you're gonna see.
a 16-foot tree that falls is not gonna get replaced, and, there's no guarantee that that's ever gonna get replaced, and I'm gonna look through it, I'm gonna see it built. That's my concern.
Okay, in
Sir,
respect.
let me just interrupt.
No, you're good.
Let me swear you in, because you're actually giving testimony at this point. Do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you've given or may give in connection with this application is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
And state your name and address once again for the record.
My name is Brian Scott, and I live at 19 Arrowhead Way, the northwest corner of this.
Brian, is the 15-foot berm, do you think that should be higher? Like, tell me what you're thinking. If you're a landscaper, I respect your opinion.
I believe that if I'm in my house on the second floor,
Yep.
and I look out my master bedroom,
Yep.
I'm going to be looking at this building for the next 50 years.
Okay, so let's think about that. Let's try to come up with a solution, right? Because,
I have my solution later, which I'll let them
Okay.
finish what they've got. My solution's right here in a speech for you guys.
okay, all right.
Right.
I want to be,
And then my last thing is, just to be clear, right now, even though outside this application, they've decided they're gonna buy those houses on Dugans Road, they are still residential houses for this application, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's what they're
Thank you.
saying.
Okay, any other members of the public? Jeff, did you want to go before we continue with the public, or do you
No,
want to?
let the public go.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
I
sure.
still have my question in my
I
head.
still have a question.
Good evening, Anthony Cipriano, 21 Arrowhead Way. I think it'll be easy just to, this is my lot, the corner lot closest, this is Brian Scott's lot. So those pictures demonstrated there is all just dilapidated and dead
Second, please.
brush. My original request, Mr. Dave, was that the applicant provide, and they originally agreed, although in the minutes the board rejected that agreement, that they don't get involved with the applicant planting trees on my property. So ideally, I would like trees planted in this brush here where they're all dead.
okay.
I would open up and allow the applicant to plant trees on my
Do
property.
you own that property?
I do.
Okay. All right.
So, and you asked a good question about the 15 feet too, which I,
Yeah,
certainly
you
want to
live there.
address.
I don't, so I can't, I'm not in your bedroom. I don't know the angles, so that's why I'm asking.
So
you.
so the other thing is, right at this property line, like right here is my child's swing set. My son is in the closest bedroom on the second floor to the property line. And then here is literally just dead brush. The pitch, I mean, we can circulate the pictures, they speak for themselves. To immediately resolve that issue, I would ask if there can be a dollar allotment on my property, part of the developer's agreement. I don't know how that typically works, or plant 8 trees somewhere in that neighborhood. That's kind of what I would like to see from my side. I know they said, it's tough because we come to these meetings. This is our almost our second year on this. I really don't know what's here. 15 feet sounds high, but I'd like to hear testimony about what am I going to see from my son's bedroom? What am I going to hear from my son's bedroom? What am I going to hear and see from the playground? Again, I don't want to be repetitive, and I don't want people to keep having to testify, but as these meetings keep going and changes keep happening, those are changes made for their application to get approved, not necessarily addressing our individual concerns. I don't want to take more of the board's time. I do appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Mr. Cipriano, before you sit down again, let me swear you in because you did give some substantive testimony. Do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you have given or may give in the future in connection with this application be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear and affirm.
Thank
Yes.
With regard to the commitment that was made early on to this gentleman to plant landscaping on his property, that, we place that before you. We are prepared to landscape on lands that are his, with his authorization. We are not comfortable making cash contributions because the landscaping would have a purpose. We would want, but the request that's made that the landscaping supplement be on his property is one that is acceptable to the applicant. We would defer to your professionals in the Shade Tree Commission for guidance on what would be the appropriate plantings, subject to the acceptance by the property owner.
Okay.
But that would be a condition that we place before you that we find acceptable.
So there could be a negotiation in relation to what this gentleman requested?
It could, and it could be a condition.
Okay.
Okay, any other members of the public? Your name and address, please?
Yes. Mike Oliu, 7 Indian Path.
Mr. Oliu, I'm going to assume that you may give some testimony as well as your neighbors, so can I just swear you in, please?
You may.
Do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you may give in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you please spell your last name?
Oliu. Indian Path is someplace back here, top of that. And I haven't heard anything address sound there. Now,
Well, we haven't
When they-
heard from their sound expert
you know,
yet.
what, the barriers and all
No,
that
the
stuff?
barrier is different. We'll address, but continue on and we'll help you out.
Okay. The reason I asked about sound is that when they did the Showplace construction, I heard that. Route 33, I hear all day. This point is, I'm gonna guess, 500 feet closer to my house. I'm gonna hear trucks all day, all night. Be it backing up, be it turning, or whatever. Okay, and during construction, how long construction takes, that's gonna affect me every day. I'm sure it's gonna be 6 days, maybe 7 days a week construction. I don't need that, okay? That's the only thing, if we're talking sound, that's my question is, why wasn't anything addressed here?
Okay, thank you. Anything further from board members regarding this initial witness?
Yeah, and going back to the Sunwell, two questions, one for the professional and then one for McKinley. For the professional question first, is that 16 feet on a berm or at ground level?
The structure itself is 16 feet, so from ground up is 16 feet. And then it's on a line that's, on the berm, a ridge line, so.
So how high is the berm that's going to be underneath the wall?
Well, it goes across different elevations as it runs.
So at the point at its height and the point at its low? We're just trying to see how this thing is landscaped and trying to understand.
I believe he testified 2 to 3 feet before.
So
At which point though?
Plus.
along this long sort of front length, I mean, it's 10 feet off the property line. It's relatively close to that property line elevation, but it's
So that's a zero.
But it's quite a bit higher than our parking area.
So, I don't know if I fully understand that. Could you just explain it to me? So it's not 16 feet off the ground?
No, it's a fishbowl. The building is below.
Right, I remember we
land
spoke
surface.
about that.
Yeah.
But my concern is that at at 10 feet off the property line, there's dirt there today.
Yeah.
On top of that actual location, how high is the berm there? That's my question.
Oh,
So,
You mean the wall? Or
It's
like
a-
the wall?
well, I mean the whole thing. I really mean the whole thing.
I
is
guess
what
I guess the
The
question.
property, starting from 33, and you just go up, and then you
Right.
come to a ridge.
Yep.
This would be built on the ridge, and then on the inside of the
Right, where the
ridge.
driving range was, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken. Yeah.
on the inside of the ridge, at the request of Mr. Shafai, we are excavating the property down pretty
Yeah.
deep.
Right.
And
Remember,
it-
we spoke about that.
And
Yep.
so our building is in a
Yep.
bit of a depression, but the ridge is being left in place.
Okay, so that's how we conclude the 16 feet is
Off the
basically?
ridge.
Okay.
Is that clear?
So
That is clear.
it's the ridge plus 16 feet.
Yes, Ms.
Yes.
Lampress.
Yeah.
That's
Existing
what I'm
ridge
trying to determine.
Plus 16 feet.
Yeah.
And then if you come inside, it drops down.
I was gonna show the board that the plan we submitted, which has the contours, makes it more apparent how those grades fall, but the way Mr. Pape just described it is correct.
Thank you, I'm just trying to get it
So
all.
is there any point of the wall is there any point on the wall higher than the roof of the building?
No. The building is a total of 30 feet by, and we followed the ordinance to the letter.
But it starts lower. It's
Yeah,
30
but-
feet from the
yeah.
grade.
We were
From
trying-
its grade.
We're trying to do the eyesight, trying to figure out, we think perhaps the cornice of the building will be visible from someone out on 33,
So
perhaps.
is there going to be a retaining wall to hold that ridge up, or is that ridge going to be free form?
All the earthwork in that area is done as graded land. It can be landscaped and or mowed. There's no, it's not like the walls, sound wall sits on top of a retaining wall.
It's the ridge that's there. It's just-
And how much wind shear could this thing withstand? Because that's a big wall, no holes. It's a very windy area coming on 33 because it's open lands.
So the answer to that is it is directly dependent on the footing for the wall. So we haven't gone through that whole calculation yet, but it can be made to withstand significant wind. It just takes a bigger footing to it. The wall itself is not particularly heavy. It's just, like you said, you know.
Well,
just the
it's a
sand,
wind
the
shear,
right.
so.
No, we acknowledge that, and we had, in a conversation earlier, we acknowledged that. I think Mr. Dottie might have been a little difficult in his answer, but it's all about the footing.
How thick is the wall?
It's similar to what you might think of as like a fence in terms of construction and material. So this is, I'm going to say, approximately 10 inches thick.
It's composite material.
Is it composite material?
Yes.
It's not like a highway barrier that you see along the turnpike or something like that?
No.
We have a catalog cut sheet that shows typical versions of it we could share.
So it being composite, is it going to gray or weather or degrade over time by elements? Because most composite woods do that.
It's not wood.
Well,
Yeah.
for composite itself, you leave composite out in the sun, it will definitely fade in color. It will also, you know, wear away.
We went into the industry to find the materials that are used for this purpose. We went and we found materials that were specifically designed for this purpose. We can share them with you. If you want me to find out the lifespan, we can find that out.
Okay, I'm just wondering that, you know, 15, 20 years down the road, we have an ugly looking wall,
Yeah.
you know, due to natural
Yeah.
elements.
So if we landscape it properly, in theory, you wouldn't see the wall, but I understand how landscape spaces itself out, and depending on what trees you plant, so on and so forth. But your questions are valid. I'm sure it has a shelf life, everything seems to.
Right. So, to expand on Mr. Zeiner's question about wind shear, how much wind can it actually withstand? You know, like hurricane force winds. How much wind? 2 miles, 10 miles, 40 miles, 50 miles an hour?
So this would get into construction code spec of how much wind it needs to be designed for. I don't know that immediate answer, but it can be designed to withstand the appropriate amount of wind, which I would assume is like a hurricane force wind.
The brochure you provided says wind load tested for hurricane force winds. It doesn't give a mileage per hour, but that's the brochure you guys submitted.
Well, and Mr. Pape, would it be fair to say that the owner of the building is going to be responsible for replacing landscaping that might fail or die, as well as if this wall were to fail or fall, they would continue to replace that as an obligation?
It is fair to say that we'd expect any, you know, in Millstone, you have a developer's agreement. Your developer's agreement has the resolution attached, and then you cut and paste all special conditions into the developer's agreement. So anything like that has its own paragraph in the developer's agreement, recorded against the property, and it stays there in perpetuity.
Right. I mean, that goes without standing, without mentioning it, but we do want to make sure that a wall gets installed that can withstand these types of winds, because if it does go down, the only thing that, it would be nice if the owner looked at it and said, hey, we have to put up another wall, but it's unlikely. What usually happens is the wall stays down until the door squeaks loud enough that somebody oils it. And our problem here in Millstone is that we are short on hands, and, you know, our enforcement is always doing something to occupy themselves. So we want to make sure here, if this is going to get approved, that this thing is going to withstand hurricane force winds.
Mr. Lambros, may I, we're asking this board to consider preliminary site plan approval, not a final. And if something like that were a condition that we had to produce the specifications and the confirmation of the stability of the wall as a condition between preliminary and final, we'd be very comfortable doing that. We didn't come with a structural person this evening, we came with a sound expert. We're comfortable making that commitment.
Okay.
And my other question was for Ms. Mertz. Given the height of this wall and the lack of walls around structures within town, how is this in relation to some of our ordinances? Is it conforming? Does it need a variance? How does this fit in?
So we're treating it as an accessory structure instead of a fence. And accessory structures can go up to 16 feet in height. We've seen it before. We see it more when we're in the zoning board. They can go to 20 feet in height if they're architecturally consistent with the primary building, but for this, since we're talking more of a wall-like structure than a building, we're keeping it at the 16-foot height, which it is. They do need a variance for setback associated with it. Accessory structures in the PCD zone are required to be setback 50 feet from side lot lines, where the portion of this structure, this accessory structure as we're going to call it, is only 10 feet from the side lot line. So they do need a setback, as we refer to it as an accessory structure, but a variance, but they do not need one for height.
Okay, that's, so, but it's really more than 16 feet if you actually go by the ground level of the building itself.
I'll defer to Matt for how it's measured from height. My understanding was because it's measured from the ground that it's sitting on, so whatever that elevation is,
okay,
that's where it's...
From the existing ground, you go up. So you can't build 5 feet, then put 60 feet on top of it. That becomes 21.
Right.
If it were to exceed that 16 feet, it would be another C variance, but my understanding from conversing with Matt is that it's consistent.
Okay, so basically you said other than the lot variance, this is a conforming heighted.
Conforming height, setback not conforming.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen on the board questions. I did want to give Matt, our acoustic expert, a chance to weigh in. So, Mike, do you want to have Matt?
Matt, would you raise your right hand, please, and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And give us your name and address.
Matthew Morello, M-U-R-E-L-L-O. I'm with Lewis Goodfriend and Associates, 415 Route 24, Chester, New Jersey.
And can you briefly give the board the benefit of your background, in particular with respect to being a sound expert?
Sure. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering degree from the University of Hartford. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey and 7 other states. I'm the owner of Lewis Goodfriend and Associates for 22 years. I've been practicing in the field of acoustics for 31 years. And I provided testimony in 4 boards in court cases in the state of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, other states for most of that time.
Okay, thank you. That's acceptable for your
Thank you,
expert
Mr. Chairman.
testimony. Go ahead. You had a question or
Yeah, my
a
only
comment?
question was, and it's more of a recommendation to the board, there seems to be some confusion as far as heights of buildings, heights of residents. I would make a recommendation that the applicant provide just a cut section drawing. 1 through the residence on the northwest property through the berm and then to the building, and then another section drawing going through the barrier, so people can get a feel, for the board and the residents can get a feel for, if I'm at the 2nd story of this house, what is my sight line going to be? I think it just might be something beneficial for the board and the public to have.
Yeah. And we may have seen that early on.
I haven't seen it
so-
with this southern barrier, though.
Well, that's because we're seeing that for the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So the cut sheet, I want to get it.
It's a section drawing through the barrier from the residence and then also from the berm if that hasn't been produced.
Got it.
That was my at this point.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, unless there's anything else from the board?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So, in the report, it says it's 16 feet tall sound barrier at 660 feet in length, and then there's 8 feet in height for 230 feet in length. So that little small section there, I'm assuming, is the one that's the 8 feet section?
Hey, can we put this back up on the TV screen too for everybody? Isn't it okay?
I've been trying to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I got the exhibits tonight, so when I switched over, now I'm not connecting with the
Okay,
other
well,
exhibits.
okay.
It's been a struggle.
Let's get the big.
Maybe we could turn that so everybody can see it.
Sorry. It's not going back on.
This one, you want to see this one that you're...
You just want to know where the 8 foot is.
Yeah, where's the 8
Just
section?
which question of the white wall is 8 feet?
Yeah,
The
the first
far
one.
back part?
Yeah, the 8-foot portion.
So this is the 8-foot portion
Oh, I would have
here.
never guessed that, so
This is
that
our
was-
entry drive, so at the bottom of this
Okay.
plan, coming along parallel to the entry drive.
Okay. 'Cause
Louis, can-
I thought it was up there.
Sorry, just for the public, could you turn your, since we don't have the screen, can you turn your board around and show them where that piece is? And I think they're pulling their necks trying to see.
Thank you.
So again, this white line is the sound barrier. It's our entry drive down to 33. So this section in here is the shorter 8-foot section.
And we classified that as a fence based on discussion with the engineer, so just to get ahead of maybe your question, Jeff.
So that part is a fence, the other part is an ancillary structure.
Accessory
Accessory
structure.
structure.
Really, I mean, it's sort of one variance or the other. If it's a fence, they need a variance for the height. If it's an accessory structure, they need a variance for setback. So if we classify the 8-foot section as a fence, they need a variance for 8 feet in the front yard, where fences can only be 4 feet. Fences don't have a setback requirement, though.
Oh, so that's a variance too then, the 8-foot fence?
The 8-foot fence for height is a
Interesting,
variance.
Okay.
All things are variance.
It's the opposite variance of the accessory
Got it,
structure.
okay.
Yeah, on this topic.
I guess the question is it fair to call this 16-foot wall an accessory structure or a fence?
I've been asking that question for a long time.
No, I'm just wondering if
It's-
we're appeasing the suggestion of a wall, or is it a fence?
It's a little bit semantics. I mean, looking at I use the definitions of the ordinance. It fit in with a accessory structure. There is no definition for fence in the ordinance. There's really the only standards our ordinance has to do with how high it can be and in which yard it can be in. Based on the accessory structure definition, the building definition, structure definition, which are in the memo I provided, I can read them if that would be helpful, but I interpreted it as an accessory structure. You really could almost go one way or the other on this. Either they need the setback variance or they need the height variance. And it's going to be one or the other, and this was how I interpreted it. I would defer to the board if you choose to interpret it otherwise. It's really your call, but
It kind of doesn't matter.
It
Like,
really
in other words,
doesn't.
like, it is what it is, right? So
Yeah.
everybody, when you vote on it or you're thinking about it, this is what you have in front of you,
Well,
right?
it-
And the fact of the matter is, we're trying to solve for a sound issue. And I know you guys spoke about a sound issue in the back. We haven't gotten there yet. We're just talking about this wall, and that seemed to be an area, and we'll get into that, right? But it doesn't matter which way we go.
agree.
This is what's before us. So think about it, variance, no variance. What do you think? Do you like it?
I'm only looking at it from the sake of consistency. If we have another application in the future, I want
Sure.
to make sure it
No,
gets measured and looked at the exact
that's-
same way.
that's
and
a-
it's
It's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. But,
It's a precedent that we set.
yep, no, it makes sense.
And it'll make a difference should you approve this application in how Mike writes up the
Wow.
resolution. So,
There you go.
I can't get those back up though.
Has anybody seen a picture of what they look like?
That's them in white. That's all the different
Right,
types,
that's
but
fine,
that's them in
but
white.
you get the idea.
Looks a little different.
Except for those with wood, pressure treated.
Yeah.
Would that be this? Different color. but-
Yeah, this could be distributed, sure. Yep, if you want.
Is that what they said?
That's the
You
catalog
can-
cut
yeah,
sheet.
it's
Can
actually-
we-
There you go.
Hey, Matt,
There you go.
can I see that?
If you tell me what page, I can pull it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, she has that presentation there. So what page are you on?
No, they-
On the bottom left. 8?
These are all good examples.
Maybe anybody want to see this? Pass it down?
No, I mean, I know the product.
Can you pass this across the mat?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
There you go. That's an excellent representation.
I have a question for our sound engineer
Mm-hmm.
regarding this topic of the walls. I do a lot of roof work, and when I'm on that roof, and I go on certain roofs that have these types of walls to, like equipment, you know, to hide equipment, so on and so forth, I'm up there doing my work, and I can hear these things whistling away, you know, just because of the wind. Is there a sound issue with these? In other words, I know that, you know, wind blowing across them can produce certain types of sounds, sometimes kind of obnoxious. I witnessed it. Related to this type of material, where a solid wall versus a, you know, a type of a broken up wall or something allow the wind to pass through, is there a problem with sound on this, or did we do any kind of sound analysis on these types of walls?
Their next witness did a study that has to do and recommended these walls. I've used not the specific product, but I've recommended products similar to this. In order for any type of barrier, wall, accessory structure to be able to block sound, it has to be solid. If the wind would go through it, so would the sound. So while it would be an effective visual screening, it wouldn't produce any additional attenuation, which was the whole purpose behind this wall. Where a berm is effective just because of its height and its width, a barrier has to be solid in its makeup and have some ability to block that.
So, okay, that's fair. So to answer my question, I guess, I'll answer it, is a solid wall will less noise than a waffled wall or a open wall.
Yeah, if the wind can go through it, so can the sound.
Okay.
So if you can see through it or the wind can
So
go
this
through
is
it.
gonna be better for sound?
Yes.
Okay.
Were you talking about the shrouds on the building around an
Yeah.
HVAC?
Or the board on boards or something
Yeah.
along that line, yes. So
No sound, just visual.
we don't want that.
Okay. Unless there's anything else for this witness, we'll move along to your next witness.
Very fine, thank
Go
you.
ahead, please.
Please stay with us. Mr. Muller, please join us. Mr. Muller could be sworn.
Sir, do you either swear or affirm that any testimony you give in connection with this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name and address for the record.
Benjamin Muller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R, and I'm one of the principals at Ostergaard Acoustical Associates. Our address is 1460 Route 9 North, Suite 209 in Woodbridge, New Jersey.
Mr. Muller, please take a few moments to share with everyone your professional and educational background.
Certainly, I have a Bachelor in Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Villanova University. I have a Master's from Stevens Institute of Technology in Mechanical Engineering with a concentration in noise and vibration control. I've been practicing in the field of acoustics for 22 years now. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey and Oregon. My license is current and good standing. I've been accepted as a professional expert in noise control across New Jersey, other states as well. I've not had the privilege of coming for this municipality yet, but here I am before you to answer some questions.
Okay, the credentials are satisfactory, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just I made some statements, but you did not rely on anybody else's investigations or studies as you came to conclusions to present to the board this evening. Is that
Correct.
So anything that was done by others, it was not part of what you relied on. This is your work product.
Correct.
I think it's important that we all hear that. And the second is, prior to undertaking the investigation, I understand that you had received a copy of Mr. Morello's November report where he had commented on the sound elements of the application.
Yes.
So you had the benefit of that report.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And if I recall, you also had the benefit of reviewing that report with Mr. Morello to understand what his goals were in that report.
Correct, yes.
I'm going to ask if you could, in a narrative fashion, identify what it is that you studied, what it is that you concluded.
Sure, certainly. It sounds like when I say it, it sounds like a pun, but it's my understanding that you guys have experienced a lot of noise testimony. I intend to briefly go through everything that I've done, just so that we have a concise narrative. I want to make sure that the questions that I would entertain would be based on the elements that I'm discussing tonight. So as part of every project that we are involved in, we always start off at the beginning, which is, what is my criteria? I'm very familiar with the New Jersey State Noise Code. I think we have a very well-written and helpful noise code in New Jersey State. We're actually one of the few areas where it has a top-down trickle. So the state sets a very nice language that's available for us to use and enforce, and then the municipalities are able to adopt portions of that in the form of a model noise ordinance. And Millstone has indeed done so. Your noise section is discussed in chapter 3-12. And so the benefit of all of this is that the limits are aligned, and we have, we're not talking about two different things. Now, I do note, and Mr. Morello points out in his report that when the model ordinance was developed, someone got cheeky and decided to put in a wording that says equal or exceed the code limit. And so when you look at a model ordinance that has adopted that language, it sort of implies that 50, which is the state nighttime limit, is not acceptable anymore. And so therefore, our local ordinance would be 49. It's semantics, in my opinion, because the difference of a decibel is really not discernible to the human ear. So I think that's just how it got slipped through the cracks. But those are the limits that we have before us tonight. So we have an overall nighttime limit of 49, and that's from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then during the daytime, that limit would be 64, essentially, for daytime standards.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just because I don't know what 49 decibels really
Yep.
sounds like. I used to do a lot of rock and roll. I don't know, it sounds loud, you know what I mean?
Yes.
What does 49 decibels sound like?
Sure. So there's a basis on the selection of these criteria. 65, which for all purposes tonight, 64 and 65 and 49 and 50 are essentially the same. So forgive me if I say 50 because I'm almost hardwired to do so. So 65 was selected because that is the limit to promote and secure speech intelligibility. If you and I were having a conversation, normal vocal effort at 3 feet, the level, lo and behold, would be 65. And so by having a state ordinance or a local ordinance that strives to make sure that outside entities are kept to 65 or below, ensures that you and I can continue our conversation without raised vocal effort. So that's where that comes from. The nighttime ordinance, no surprise, that was selected to promote sleeping conditions, to minimize interference with that. The selection of that, it comes from a couple different areas. I know the World Health Organization has done considerable studies on it. They show that they did an extensive study on aircraft passovers, and they showed that in bedroom sound levels of 45 or greater, you were more prone to wake up. So the state code here of 50, while it's tied into that, is actually one step more stringent than that. So an open window would attenuate at least 10 dB. So by meeting 50 at a receptor inside a bedroom would be 40 or below. And so what we're doing is, again, promoting an environment to not have disruptions.
There's obviously a lot of variables with the size of the windows, open, so on and so forth, but I'm sure it makes a difference. Can you help me understand, because I'm most concerned about nighttime sound, right? Because I have a highway that's active there that does create sound, right? So I know that area is naturally going to have some sound. What I'm worried about is the residents and what happens at night. How far do you think 49 decibels travels? Like, if you're talking at 49 decibels, can I hear that from 50 feet away? Can I hear that conversation? Can I not hear it at 50 feet? Can I not hear it at 100 feet? Do you understand my question?
Sure, certainly. I have some
probably doing a bad
anecdotes
job
to
of it.
help understand that.
Yeah.
What becomes apparent is that when we talk about just a level, which the unit of sound is a decibel,
Yeah.
when we talk about that, there can be many different variations of source and distance that might end up at the same point. So it
Yep.
becomes very difficult to talk about like
For example, wind may have an effect on that?
Sure, but
Okay.
an aircraft taking off from Newark Airport can eventually be 50. It might be thousands of feet away, but a whisper can also be 50 at Inishaway.
Completely get that, but,
Okay.
so if the idea is that over that wall, right, because we're talking about sound at the property line, in some cases, or over this wall, or whatever we're talking about. At that point, and I'm probably doing a real bad job of explaining what I'm trying to ask, but at the point of the wall, right, or any other point on the property line, at night, we're saying we're gonna keep this noise down below 49 decibels, right? That's what we're saying, right?
Correct.
Let's assume we're talking in the back by where these people live, by Arrowhead Drive. And let's go to that place where this gentleman had shown what the trees looked like. You know, so we're taking the back left corner of this application. Okay, and there's a noise being created at that spot at 49 decibels, right? You with me so far? Okay, right. So how far from there? Like, how far is 49 decibels gonna travel there?
Okay. So
Is that even a possible question for you to answer?
I see where you're going with it, but again, it depends a lot on the details. And
Okay.
I don't want that to be a cop-out, but I'm going to give you some
No,
more
no,
information
you're the expert, I'm not.
to help you put it into perspective. So we related 65 as being two people talking at normal vocal strength.
Yep.
50, I have best, through my practice, come up with a real-life presentation for it, and 50 is about the sound level of my refrigerator, 3 feet in my kitchen when I'm ready for a midnight snack. Okay,
Okay.
So that's the order of magnitude that we're talking here.
Okay.
So the idea is that the noise code is put into place to keep these intrusive or intermittent or outside noise sources down to a level to which they will not have a negative impact.
You actually
Now-
explained that pretty good. I get what you're saying.
So
that
other
was very
factors, which I do expect to be asked, so I'll answer them before their questions. But in terms of audibility, many other factors go into that. So the state says is only looking at what our site produces. That's all we're mandated to do. Everyone keeps their nose clean, right? We know that there's an ambient in position. I haven't specifically measured the ambient here. We know 33 is a present force.
No
I'm
doubt.
sure there's lulls. I'm sure it comes and it goes during the nighttime. I'm sure it bottoms out at some point. The idea would be that our 49 or whatever we're contributing at a receptor may be audible depending on what the current ambient level is at that time, the sensitivity of the people, whether the windows are open or closed,
course.
etc. So there's a lot of factors of whether it's audible. So nothing in the noise code, nor what I'm going to present tonight, says that our site will never be audible, but what we have to support per the code is that if it is audible, that it's not at a magnitude that's going to have negative
in excess of
impact.
this. No, I get the idea of trying to standardize what you're trying to create, and then ultimately we derive some decision at that point. Just like I had said, what does it sound like in a bedroom, or you had mentioned we're trying to, the size of the window has an effect. Is the window open or closed has an effect. I completely get it. But just, I'm trying to standardize what the sound would sound like, or the level of the sound, so that everybody on the board can sort of be comfortable. And I hope this is helpful, and I apologize for taking up so much time, but it's important to me to think about this too.
Okay, so is that satisfactory?
To me, it does.
I have one, so your concerns are all our concerns, we want to answer them. Of
course.
But there's a standard.
Yeah.
And so we have to meet the standard.
Yeah.
We don't have to be better than the standard.
That's
We
right.
have to meet the standard.
But I want to know what the standard really sounds
Got it.
like. That's what I'm just trying to figure out, because I don't know what that number is irrelevant to me.
Right, and us professing that we fully comply doesn't have a bearing unless we're
Yeah,
able to
it still
link
doesn't
to
help me.
other
The
things. I
refrigerator
understand.
comment really helps me, right? I know how loud a refrigerator is.
Right.
Right, but I don't know what 49 decibels equals.
Correct.
So I want to expand on that too and say, and ask, at 49 decibels or 65 decibels, and the wind is traveling in a certain direction, we know it can take sound. Would a burst of sound for 15 seconds be the same as a continuous hour of nonstop noise?
Of the same magnitude,
Of the same.
the steady noise
Yeah.
carries more weight, right? No one wants to be subjected to a constant level. Let's say it's 50, that's what we're talking about the limit. If our site was producing 50 across a 60-minute period, that would have a much more of a negative impact than if we were to have intermittent 50s across a normal baseline of something around 40 lower than 50.
Okay.
But the code allows us to do a steady 50. That, if I can get through the rest of my testimony, you'll hear that that's not what we're presenting, but that's what the code foresees. Okay.
Have you started your testimony?
I don't know, I lost track, but I'm okay, I'm able to hang on.
Do you guys like it better if I don't come?
We spoke about the noise code. I'm assuming there's no specific questions pertaining to that. We have our marching orders. We know that the state and local overlap to the extent that we need to. One of the other sections that I know came up in the comment letter, which I just want to touch upon though, is that the language, as legal documents do, chooses specific wording and we're all left to figure it out and interpret it. And so both ordinances discuss that these limits must be met at or within the receiving boundary. So at or within is a purposeful choice, and it also leads to a lot of confusion. When you hear at the property line, everyone clearly says this is where the site plan shows the property line. When I say or within, is that in addition to, is that ancillary to it? The DEP, who oversees the state ordinance, has released guidelines for enforcement, and has finally provided us with a bunch of clarity, or at least direction from the enforcement side point. So the first thing to mention here is that they have finally identified that the noise code is put into place as a reaction, as an enforcement tool. So a noise complaint is generated, investigators come, we have our marching orders, we're able to show whether we exceed or comply. And what it does caution is, unfortunately, where I'm sitting here tonight is looking at prospective compliance, because we're opining about what may or may not happen. It's not a reality. We hear the adage that if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, similarly, all across New Jersey, we have levels far in excess of the noise code, and if those aren't something that then triggers a complaint, it's not a true violation of the code. Those are semantics. What I'm here to present tonight is that our project has the integrity and the structure to fully comply with that under our proposed use.
Before you go on, one question which I think is going to come up is we talked about, or was mentioned, construction and noises that are associated with construction. Clearly that's going to be unique and most likely an exception of this rule. What happens with that?
Sure.
There's no nighttime.
Well,
there's no nighttime construction.
Right.
Okay,
So-
that's
so
fine. But
construction
during the
is
day, we
a-
have criteria there. Is there an ordinance in Millstone to protect residents from that? How does it work?
Right. So construction is ugly. We know earth moving equipment. I've seen pile driving. I've seen beds of rock that need to be exploded. There's all kinds of entities of construction noise that can be insufferable for the duration that you're extended. The way ordinances address that is they set forth allowable construction hours, and that's the best management tool that we have to control that. We say they have to be within the allowable daytime hours. Some municipalities regulate that it can't be before certain times on Saturdays and Sundays. And then the idea would be that if you were to operate outside of those hours, you have to fully comply with the limits that are set forth in our ordinances here, and that becomes extremely tricky. Now,
And what do we have in Millstone?
No, we have standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
There is
I
some.
can try to look it up, but I know.
All I know is the 10 PM.
Typically you hear like nothing before 7, nothing after,
That's
for
it.
construction, nothing after 7, like they try to stick with business hours. But
It's the same, well, it's the same one for Sylvie and for Stavola. That's
Right.
where, it has those, and I think it's something like 7
I don't
to
have the
6.
exact time, but definitely no nighttime.
Yeah, I think it's 7 to 6, but I'll get that ordinance for you.
We've been through this with show place, we have a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
So that's the way construction is traditionally handled, and then what would happen is there can be scenarios where some sort of specific event might be more sensitive to a party than others. Certainly in those cases, we work with those entities, and we would make recommendations like don't put the emergency generator 5 feet from the resident, right? We would put that central in the property. Just following good practices will generally allow the project to move forward without.
No doubt. And I live next to something that does create unique noises and does have an exception to once a year, they're in theory allowed to create noise that's very loud, right? They're allowed to play music, they're allowed to have bullhorns and speakers, and they actually do it more than once a year in violation of what's been agreed to. So I'm a little sensitive of this issue because I know where I live, it's violated several times during the year. So I'm trying to think about like how much it upsets me and trying to think about these residents. So I don't suspect there's going to be bullhorns or parties at this location or things like that. But there is something I want to try to make sure is not going to happen. I want to try to make sure there's not exceptions to this. This idea of a standardized level of sound makes some sense, and I understand that there's going to be peaks and valleys, but I get it. But I don't want these people to have to come in. If this application is to come through, I don't want them to have to be concerned about this. So I don't know how to protect people around it for these exceptions in sound. I really want to make sure that as we write this ordinance, if it is to move forward, that we're protecting everybody. And you know, I just want you to think about that. I don't know how anybody's going to vote or what people are leaning, but you know, it is a big problem. It's a problem for me personally because of where I live. So I want to make sure nobody else suffers from the problems I have.
Mr. Pape, if I may suggest, one of the things that Mr. Miller is trying to explain, it's difficult because we're talking in numbers and, you know, what does it sound like and so forth. One of the ways that you could add some quantitative clarity to that would be to perform existing sound level measurements at the site.
Yeah.
Put a sound level meter at the southeast property line, put one at the northwest property line for 24 hours on a weekday.
Right.
And then present those numbers to the board and
So-
say, here are the existing sound levels. So it is 35 dB at night and 50 during the day.
So let's go down that road. So in theory, if the nighttime level is 49, you're saying, why don't we go out there today? And let's hear what it sounds like today with no construction, nothing else changing on the property. And maybe it's in excess of it now, right? Maybe it's not, right? Whatever it is.
Don't know.
But the idea, you're right. And I don't know
But
either.
if you have that, then it's a little easier to say.
It's a great idea.
Well, you want to know what it sounds like. Well, then at the site now, it's X dB.
I think it's a great idea. So then we can get an idea of how much more, in theory, if there is going to be more.
Right.
We can get an
Because
idea.
as Mr. Mueller sort of said, on the downside of the code is that the noise ordinance applies in Newark and Jersey City, and it applies in Millstone. So what's 65 dBA, when it's already 65 dBA out there, there's almost no impact. But if the standard is 50 dBA and the existing sound level is 30, that could be a significant impact. We don't know, but you would certainly hear it, and the way to evaluate that would be to evaluate the existing sound level.
Is that something you could do for us that might be helpful? Is that something that's unrealistic to ask for?
No, so there is purpose in it. I do want to cautious that ambient aside, the code limits are the code limits.
I get it.
To Mr. Morello's point, it would give us a gauge to be able, like, the problem with my side of the testimony and even your side of receiving it is this faceless entity, right? There's this unknown, and I don't know how to put a finger on it.
Yeah.
This would allow us to then say, here's your existing ambient level. Now, just caveats before we would go and do the process, I would put a report together that would call these out as well. But we do have 33. So Mr. Morello's point of Newark being, our codes are maybe too permissive, and then elsewhere in New Jersey they're too, or other way around, excuse me. But this is in the Pinelands, so we know that we have levels that are dynamic and there's current traffic on there. So that's why I'm confident that our site will continue to blend in with it.
I'm sure you're right, but I also am trying to make a board comfortable with the decision I make. I'm also trying to make a resident or residents comfortable, and for that matter, all our residents comfortable with these scenarios.
Sure.
So the idea is, I completely get the situation that we're working with, but I also am trying to achieve some comfort for all of us, and helping us to make a decision.
And my one other caveat to point out, though, is that we would indeed be measuring a vacant parcel, which is going to be the most conservative threshold.
Totally get it.
Because if this board were to consider other applications that were approved by right for this property, that's really the impact that I would typically be seeking
Yep.
is we could build an office plaza here, and then what would those emissions be compared to the warehouse?
That's
And that's
right.
what we would be comparing.
But we
So-
still have to meet those state standards. This has
Absolutely,
high or
regardless
low.
of what it is.
So
we
it
could be
doesn't,
permitted by right to put air conditioning units 20 feet from the property line, and we would still be beholden to the same limits.
that's right, but at
as-
least
as
we
our
can,
site.
at least we can come in there, we could all become comfortable with the situation of, is it going to be twice as loud? Is it gonna be a little bit loud? Maybe, you know, it's already at those levels today, and in reality, what we're trying to build won't really add to it. So, Mr. Lambert had pointed, or you pointed out the idea of consistent noise, maybe this does create more consistent noise, but we can all debate these things. I'm personally having a hard time understanding the relevance of the numbers. That's all.
Understood.
And I'm a bit sensitive to it, so that's all.
Sure.
Because right now it's all theoretical. I mean, we're just basing it on a modeling system. We really do not know what the site is
Exactly.
going to generate. We will never know until it's actually.
I appreciate your concerns, but although I'm discussing possible or models and these, my field is based in science, so I'm as confident in my outcome as other forms of disciplines that rely on numbers. This isn't fictional stuff. I've gone out and measured trucks in truck courts, and that's what I'm proposing to. That's what I projected here and imposed on our project here to discuss with you tonight what this application would likely be.
So let me look at it from a different lens. Assuming that this is all done, it's all completed, everything like that, we go out there and do a sound test. I'm noticing on some of your sound diagrams, you're very, very close to that 50 dBA presently on your model estimates. What happens if your model is off by 10% and now you're about, say, 55 dBAs? What can be done to remediate it? You can't move the building, you got all your walls up, you got all your berms and trees up. What could be done to bring that noise level back down to a conforming level?
Well, if it is something that is off by that degree, then that's something that was either not foreseen or something that's not conforming to the expectations on the site. So remediation could be, and we've seen it in other projects, administrative controls. What are you guys doing? You're not supposed to be doing that. Let's do something that you're supposed to be doing. That would resolve that issue. The other thing would be, what additional measures need to be in place? Do you need a solid barrier on top of the berm in place of that? Everything that I'm showing is no. I don't forecast that. And I'm sitting before you as a professional, and it's my job to be right here. I don't want to present something to you and then come back 6 months later and say, oh, I was just, I was a little off.
So
It's not a good.
no, I get that, but all models are probabilistic models that you're working with. What is the degree of error in these models?
Well, when you were talking about 10%, everything is plus or minus a dB or so. So what we try to do is add levels of conservatism in as I go, because again, I want to have a clean track record that when these things are constructed, that indeed, Mr. Muller said there wasn't going to be a noise issue, and there isn't. So when we look at what our levels are, and we haven't gotten to the models yet, but when we get there, you'll see that I've taken maximum levels from what I've measured and used those as my modeling criteria or source.
It's interesting that the model is consistent. In theory, I also work with models.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's a consistent deviation throughout the differences in sound. So for example, 20 decimals, if you think it's off by maybe 1 decimal, but if it's a 50 decimal scenario, it could also be off by 1 decimal. Like it doesn't.
That's a different percentage.
Correct.
So sound is logarithmic, and
Yeah.
so when we talk about changes, there are substantial swings in energy for the smallest change
Yeah.
in sound level.
Yeah.
But just to continue with our deviation discussion, type 1 sound level meters, which are the workhorse of my firm, they have a plus or minus of 1 dB accuracy. A type 2 sound level meter has a plus or minus of 2 dB sound level difference. So in all of this, there's this level of spread. And to your point, if we went out there and we measured 51, I don't believe that would change the conclusions that we have before you. There would be a 51, but in my opinion, that would not change my belief that the project's not gonna have a negative impact, and nor would it change that there's suddenly rampant complaints associated with some on-site noise that was contributing to 51 versus a 49. So, how about, this might be a helpful tool. We're talking about sound and how it's perceived. A change in sound of 1 or 2 dB is not discernible. Changes of 3 will be just discernible for someone with good hearing. Changes of 6 are noticeable across the board as a noticeable change. 10 becomes either a doubling of loudness or a halving of loudness, and that becomes a substantial change. So when we're talking about percentage, I don't deal with that because it's foreign to me.
No, that I get, but the thing is...
But that's the change that we're talking about here. And so the fact that the day code is 65 and the night is 50, and that's a 15 dB swing, that is a dramatic change. And so what we're proposing here is that because our site has the potential to operate 24 hours a day, the night is my focus. And we've provided all these mitigation strategies, the berm, the sound wall, so that any activity on site will comply with those nighttime noise codes. That also means that this application will never reach the threshold of the 65 day because we've already implemented these. So there is a net benefit here. If we were only proposing a daytime operation, I would be before you talking about 65 and having that blend in with existing conditions. Just want to put that into perspective.
Fair enough.
I have a question about the New Jersey State Standard. It seems like it's a one-size-fits-all, like the board's sound engineer said. It's the same for Newark as it is in Millstone. Does that preclude Millstone from having its own home rule and developing its own sound standards?
For New Jersey, it does, unfortunately. So I was talking about how our state is unique, that we have this top-down flow. Elsewhere, if you go out to Pennsylvania, they don't have a state code. They offer municipalities to fend for themselves. Sometimes they have some county help, but you then see a lot of variation between there. The idea for New Jersey is to come up with this conformity and the science behind it to promote that these are appropriate goals. But they're not picked out of nowhere. Our neighboring state of Connecticut, their nighttime noise code is 51. The daytime noise code is 61. So they have a little bit of a difference there. New York State doesn't have a state code, but if they have a guideline document that does more of what you're looking for, which is show that the ambient that's present, that a new application wouldn't increase those levels by 6 dB. So the numbers that we've been discussing about being just noticeable, those are all coming into play for why those rules are in place. But I'm more than comfortable that Millstone fits the mold for the New Jersey State Noise Code, and that it is more than protective for the environment here. So I know we discussed that we might potentially be off target here, but I don't believe so.
You want to proceed with the testimony?
Maybe.
We'll see.
We'll see. I'll try a little bit more. We'll see. No, all these questions are great, and whether they come now or at the end, it's semantic. Okay, so we got through our criteria. I started talking about the fact that we do a model. I have some challenges with trying to put a model together, but we make our assumptions and we make them conservative. So one of the questions that Mr. Merlo brought up was there was no reference of HVAC. Now, we had a little discussion earlier regarding that if we had a steady noise producing 50 at night, that would potentially be more impactful than having an intermittent noise of that same magnitude. Projects of this type, most projects in general, do not have the fine design of the HVAC before approval. That's just not how it goes. So what I do in this scenario is I take something from a recently completed application and I push it into this one. So what we've modeled for HVAC is a rooftop unit, a 25-ton unit, and then an exhaust fan that have paired up for each of the 4 corners of the building, which would be serving the conditioned space inside what would likely be the office space for it. The warehouse is not going to be conditioned by a typical warehouse, and so you might have some makeup air units. So what we have here on our exhibit, let's see, so do we need to introduce it as a new exhibit because these are just the larger versions of what I have in my 23rd February report?
The report is filed.
Mr. Mueller, sorry I keep throwing you off a little bit. So the trucks, and you had mentioned the facility can operate 24 hours a day. What is a tractor trailer? What's the average decimal level.
Let him do the
Okay.
HVAC, he'll get to the
Okay,
trucks, I
okay.
promise.
Okay.
I wanted to unfold it in a suspenseful manner, and
However-
I appreciate
fine.
wanting to get to the chase. I'll try to make this brief, but.
You can't.
No, this is all helpful, like I said.
You can't, Chris is here.
I don't sell product, I promote education. So, we're just starting with the small fruit here with the rooftop equipment. So this is the stuff that's 24 hours a day, right? It does cycle on and off, but we're gonna, for the sake of argument here, it stays on at all times. I did not specifically model that, but what I did make sure is that I included that into our models of the truck sound levels. When the trucks are not there, the resulting levels are 40 or below. So insignificant contributions with respect to allowable code limits. Okay, we'll jump to the trucks because that is what. Yes, please.
I have a
That's correct.
question about your overlays.
Yes.
So that overlay is, everything is representative in colors, correct?
Yes.
So, Danielle, at the bottom of the screen, is those residential homes on the southeast corner? Okay. So what does yellow represent? Because I had a hard time seeing those numbers.
Sure, I just put it up. Let me walk through the parameters so that everyone has their bearings. So I've kept the convention that north is up, which is what we've previously seen. So 33 is down at the bottom of the page. Do I need a microphone to walk over there, or am I yelling loud?
I think you're at 68.
I am using a raised vocal effort on purpose. But no one is sleeping, right? So we're okay. Thank you. I can hear myself. Okay. So what we have is acoustical modeling. You're already looking at me, pulled the curtain back. So just don't digest all of this. Let me explain what happens here. So we take the CAD plans that the engineer has provided. It includes all the topography, the berm. We create a three-dimensional representation of the site. The building is put into place, all of the elevation contours, the geometry, the distances are all important. The fact that our site is sunk in is taken into consideration, etc. And what we end up with is a three-dimensional representation of the site. What we then impose upon that, and you can see these teal contours, these are elevation contours that are shown around the site. When we introduce a noise source, which again, we're only modeling what's on our site, we represent those. The HVAC is these blue pluses. And then this figure specifically is looking at a truck traversing around the perimeter of the court, through the truck court, out into the site and making a loop and then leaving. Property line is outlined in red. We see several locations, A through E, are shown in the model here. All of them are nearby residential receptors. They're all at second-story elevation, because to me that is the most critical geometry, especially when we start to discuss the fact that we have a berm and a barrier here. So we want to look at what that upper story vantage point is. I'm also looking at primarily the closest receptors. So while I could assign everyone in the neighborhood a letter, we don't need to, because we can also interpolate from our contours. Speaking of contours, we are representing the sound emissions in terms of 1 dB contours in a color-coded fashion. So in the legend on the right-hand side, I'd like your focus to go to 50, which is the nighttime noise code we've been talking about, 4950, and that's the gray contour. And you can see that at certain vantage points here, and that pure gray is what equates to 50. And then if I were to go one step towards the noise source, that's 51, 52, 53. And if I go to a step further away, 49, 48, 47, etc. But to take some of the guesswork out of it, the emissions calculated at the discrete locations is provided on the bottom left-hand corner. So what this is showing is a truck traversing around the site. Now, I don't typically present a model in this fashion because I feel it looks deceptive. We're looking at a single truck traveling around the site. And what we result in here is what looks like a lot of blue and a lot of noise. But what we're actually modeling here is a moving noise source, which, granted, I don't have the ability to provide you with time as a variable here. But if you were to imagine that truck were to be moving at certain points, and that every time it stopped, or not stopped, but every time we paused its voyage, we created a model. And so what we end up here is showing that at any point along where the truck would travel, these are the worst case sound emissions that would be coming off of that traveling truck.
So you're only looking at it from a single, what about an aggregate? Say you have
Sure.
2 trucks and a garbage truck at the same time, and you get the generator going, 'cause
Right.
it's recycling. That,
Sure.
that is an aggregate of noise.
So we talked about being conservative. Even though I'm only using one, because I'm using the maximum level, I've already encompassed all of those other concerns. Because when a truck is driving, or when any noise that we're talking about tonight, we're saying driving. I model it at 74 at 50 feet as a maximum. When that truck starts to decelerate, that level drops down. When he is idling, it's even lower than that. When somebody else is doing something different at another vantage point on the site, it's a different combination of that. And so when we talked about how sound is logarithmic in nature, if we have 2 sources that are equal at the same distance, let's say it was 50 and 50, that equals 53, not 100. So it's not a linear addition. So when we have this noise source that, for example, closest to location A, we would expect him to be contributing levels of 48. If there are other trucks on the site, and I guarantee you there will be, I don't want to be up here testifying otherwise, but what I will testify to is that this maximum level at off-site vantage points is driven solely by whatever is closest to it at its maximum level. We could have stuff on the opposite side of the building contributing, who knows what, it doesn't matter, there's a giant building between it. We could have other vehicles here, maybe 2 of them are idling, maybe one of them just finished backing up. Those levels, again, have subsided and are not generating their maximum levels at the same time my model maximum is generated. And so we don't have that accumulation effect. The way a truck court operates, and this is taking noise out of it, this is just safe truck court operation. Truck comes in, he waits, am I supposed to go over there? He sees somebody moving in that dock already, so he's gonna wait till he's finished. It's the same etiquette that we use in our target parking lot. And so we wait for somebody to finish safely maneuvering out of their spot, and then he goes in place. So if I were to play on an audio recording of a warehouse like this, you would get a maximum level, and then it would subside, and then you might get somebody else. Somebody else on the other side will start their process. Somebody in the meanwhile is driving on the far side of the site. So that's the type of activity that occurs. But by me focusing on what's the maximum, what's the closest location, I'm trying to remove the variability out of that and create it in an analysis that I can more readily rely on. Otherwise, it gets very complicated quickly.
And the factor of wind has no play?
So the elements, temperature, humidity, wind, all certainly can have effects on propagation of sound, not in the distances that we're showing here. We're talking thousands of feet, and we'll have some sort of impact on it. And so we don't really, the model does take into account traditional meteorological conditions, but at these distances, we could get 100% humidity or 0% humidity, and that's not going to be substantial enough in this short distance to have a dramatic effect and change what we're presenting here.
So, for letter E down there, the gray, which is approximately 50 dBA, you're saying?
Yes.
Pretty much encompassing that whole entire building.
I don't know if I would characterize it that way. So E is at an upper story here. We're showing it to be 49. So yes, that's the limit of where we're reaching. And then this is 50, this is 51, 52, all the way up. The entrance and exit of the site is notoriously complex. We know that once vehicles are on public roadways, they're subject to state and federal regulations, requires them to have a muffler, requires them to be in good working order. There are no noise codes that pertain to vehicles on public right of
I
way.
thought they were exempt, right, from the...
It's from what we're talking about here, yes, but they do have their own codes to follow. Federal regulations require them to, they have generally permissive levels that they can't be, like if they were out of repair, they would violate those. But they're relative to the vehicle and not the source, and so it doesn't provide me with much help, or for that matter, to, the truck is in compliance as it drives along the road here, regardless of how much it's contributing to the environment.
So does your model basically extrapolate out the road noise on 33 to get what you're seeing for letter E?
We have no ambient included here.
Okay,
There's no aircraft pass-bys, there's no occasional dog barks, there's no wind rustling, there's no motorcycle driving down the roadway here, and for the most part, or not for the most part, but for the major component, there's no Route 33 traffic.
Okay.
So all of that, which again is highly variable, and it's hard for me, I'm certainly interested to go and do an ambient survey to put that picture to that unknown, but it is highly dynamic. You're gonna see it come up and down as it goes, even across the nighttime hours, because at some point, at any hour, somebody's driving on 33.
Right.
It's my anticipation. So when that happens, that vehicle passes by here. If we were to come up with a model of that, you would see a blurb surrounding the corridor of Route 33. So in my opinion, that becomes why this crossing of the property line here isn't worth consideration of, because the public vehicles are already contributing sound here, which isn't shown. I understand that it's not presented here. And so what we want to ensure is that the new entity, which didn't previously exist, is not then introducing a negative impact from other directions.
So I understand what you're saying, but us as a board have to take into consideration that that is literally on the cusp. He is showing us gray, which is equal to 50 dBA, or approximately, he's saying 49. So we have to understand that, I mean, with his testimony, I understand what he's saying, but it is right at the cusp.
I think he said that.
Yeah.
I think he absolutely said it's 49 at that structure. You can't say it any plainer than that. It didn't sound like the consultant was beating around the bush.
And my goal is to optimize, so I apologize if that seems like I'm trying to walk the fine line too much. But we ended up with an 8-foot fence here, and that is, the purpose of this was because I understood from previous discussions that the board was concerned about the entrance and exiting of trucks here. My main focus is that we now have a truck court in an area that currently occupies a golf course. The fact that we have some trucks entering and exiting the property are, to me, no different than the local vehicles that are currently on Dugan, right, road or on 33. So I do balance those when I'm trying to propose an ideal solution. And I did carry it down, but ultimately decided to stop it at a point to make sure that I continue to promote sight triangles and to, make sure that it was aesthetically pleasing. We don't want to have it come right to the, so could we make this a little bit better? There could be ways to do that, but in my opinion, while we're affording ourselves a greater margin, it's not noticeably beneficial to anyone.
So can I ask you, for A up there?
Yes.
So just, what is the reasoning of how that sound is bouncing that way like that? Because that isn't how you would think that it would propagate out from that warehouse with the way the wall is.
What, do you suspect it would be uniform?
There
It
is
is
no.
Like, yeah,
weird how
right.
it's propagating that way.
But there might be topography, well, you should answer, but
That's what,
I'm assuming it's.
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not above the limit, but it's odd how it's propagating that direction.
It's existing topography. When you get up to where we have our structures, the residential community, sound can bounce off of them as well. So the fact that you see this protrusion here, which again doesn't go over 50, but we have this center body here, and that's because sound from one vantage point here is causing a reflection off of that building.
It's interesting.
I
would have never expected that.
What I found interesting as well, and we'll see it more in some other slides, but the berm that was proposed is actually 2 separate berms. And I suspect, we can have the civil engineer come up again, but that, we're trying to remove the flow of water, and so these are split into 2 so that there could be drainage down to the basin. But because there's 2 different berms, you see that there is this slight low level here, and that's what's giving you these interesting artifacts around this collection here. So from a noise standpoint, I would have traditionally proposed a single one. We had to make a compromise there to continue to promote
Interesting.
safe drainage.
Is landscape, so we talked a little bit about adding some landscape to some of the properties or some of the areas up there. That, I'm assuming, reduces this leakage, and that's not factored in here?
Let's talk about that, because I've gone over to the northeast side here, and we've already had some public questions on it. So traditionally, through my career, we will continue to promote that landscaping does nothing.
Okay.
We need to eventually have a swath of forest that is dense enough to not readily be able to see through it. And so normally, I won't provide any sort of attenuation for existing or proposed woodlands or things like that. I did end up, you'll see this green hatch here. So northeast of the site is common with the brook, and we do have an existing large buffer that will remain. And so that was dense enough that I did decide to add some attenuation in here and to show a more accurate representation of what's happening to the northeast here. But you can see that because of that, and that's not being touched, there's also a swale here where obviously the brook is at a lower elevation. So you see how the contours don't uniformly spread out. If we were on a even plane, you would see more circles and more symmetric shapes. But instead here, we get a lot of undulations, and that's because of that.
So, quick question. Does the size of the building affect the geometry of the sound that you have?
Certainly, we've modeled it to what's proposed.
Mm-hmm.
The height of the building is going to matter about the rooftop equipment.
Mm-hmm.
The height of the building is going to matter for if we have a activity on the southern side, and I'm looking at what the emissions would be on the northern side. A 30-foot building is substantial compared to any sound barrier that we might construct. So whether this is 30 or 35 doesn't change things particularly. But the shape is also important, and then also we wanted, more importantly than the screening of it, we want to take credit for the reflections off of it. So for my noise source here, some of this sound at A is because it's bouncing off of the building.
Right.
And the model is taking that into consideration.
Mr. Mueller, I have one question for Angela.
Oh my God, please.
How you doing? Do you want 5 minutes?
Time now.
Okay. That sounds like we're gonna take, I apologize to interrupt you, but we need to take a break for 5 minutes.
That's fine.
Thank you. You're such a trooper.
Angela and I have been out every night this week.
Oh.
And again tomorrow night. Yeah. Work related, yes.
She's a good call.
Every night. And next week. And next week. We go again.
Still haven't got the-
We're gonna get back on the record. Everyone ready to go, Danielle?
All the kids rented, Jill and I brought our stuff, and that's like physical, not jumping onto it, so.
So, Mr. Pape, we're gonna continue with your witness, but I did want to point out, but Matt, I wanted to point out that, we're gonna continue with your witness, but at a point in time relatively soon, I'd like to, turn it over to the board's witness, so that we can get his perspective in real time as to the testimony we heard. I'm not suggesting your testimony would be concluded, but I don't want to be in a spot where we're at the end of the night and we break, and then we only hear from Matt next time, and we might have lost some of the what you've told us.
We have a lot of momentum going, so I don't have much to go before I feel like there's a pause.
Excellent, you'll let us know. Thank you.
You're gonna get the hook in 10 minutes.
9 now.
Talk quick, man.
We're back on, we're good? Okay. Assuming there's no more questions on the model that's up now, I'd like to walk through the other. Can we bring up the next figure, since you're multitasking? So I was expressing before that what I was showing in that early model, while it was factual, in some ways it's misrepresented the project because it's showing such an egregious color around the area. And then that's not how the warehouse would traditionally operate. The way the warehouse would traditionally operate is that a vehicle would come in, every 5 minutes, you would have something like that occur, and then during the daytime hours, and then that you would have these certain one-offs. And so the focus of my analysis for a warehouse is traditionally on what happens in the truck court. And so for the next 4 figures, you're going to see a lot of similarities, but what I have modeled shown.
I just have one quick question.
Yeah, this
Just
is
so I
not
get a
the
reference-
appropriate
No, I get
time.
a
If it's a
reference
procedural question, go ahead.
It's not, all I want to know is, I'm sorry, but what, are these houses on Indian Path, or what is these white spots there? Just so I get a reference point, that's all.
I think, let him.
The address of B.
Yes, I didn't specifically address those, but all of the white blocks represent structures. And so when we received our bearing, we have the residential community to the northwest here, represented by location A. Locations B and C are to the northeast. And then we have our group house here behind the restaurant, there's apartments, location D and E.
But what is B? Where is B located?
This is the nearest residence to the northeast. There's some garages and sheds back here that
That's your
aren't-
house.
That aren't.
That's up by
lived in.
you.
I don't know.
It's on Arrowhead.
Well, now you know.
It's
So,
Arrowhead.
Thank you for
I'm
explaining
sorry,
that.
what is this? What is the address?
It-
Now we just heard the answer, correct?
It's on Arrowhead Way.
It's on
We-
Arrowhead.
yeah, we-
No, B is not.
No.
This is
I'm sorry, Indian Path. I'm getting
Indian
them
Path.
backwards. I'm sorry.
So that's where I live, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Okay. So again, this becomes what I'm most interested in. So these are the highest level activities that occur within the truck court. It's going to be a collection of backup alarms, coupling to coupling, which is the connecting and deconnecting of the trailer. It's going to be the release of air brakes when the truck finally gets into its dock. It turns the vehicle off and it releases that, which results in a high frequency discharge. And in addition, this consumes driving, which we showed before as a circular path. So these are the short duration, high level events that will occur when a truck comes in and parks into the loading dock. So what I have in the next 4 figures is showing what happens when this event occurs in the northwest corner, what happens when it occurs in the northeast, what happens when it occurs in the southeast, and then finally what happens when it occurs in the southwest. And so this now provides a more realistic picture as opposed to the truck looping around, which was showing multiple models on top of each other. Here you can more explicitly see how that berm to the northwest here is operating. You can see that going up and over the berm substantially attenuates it, that the sound wants to travel around almost the way water would flow. You want to go into the path of least resistance. And so that's where we were able to ensure and confirm that the berm heights and geometries were sufficient enough to sufficiently block the residential area over here. Now, you can see that A receives the full protection of the berm for this vantage, for this truck point over here, and that the other houses that are further away have distance in addition to some screening by the berm. And we're not only able to provide the berm for certain areas on site, but we see that this is no longer needed because there's sufficient distance here to allow that. And before we had pointed out the odd reflections, but this is because there is sound that's reflecting off of the building and then traveling in a more focal point off of the building. So that's where we get these little undulations here. Can we go to the next image? Oh, we fully see that everything is below our code limits. Northeast, I know we have a resident here who's in that direction, but as far as I evaluate this, it's our residences that have the greatest buffer from this site activity. And so you see in this location, levels are sufficiently below. Location B is 42. Actually here you see that A, which is maybe equidistant, but the berm here reduces to 47. So A is actually higher in level than receptors to the northeast over there. Activity on the north is sufficiently screened for receptors to the south, and then what we'll see in the next two slides is that any activity on the southern docks is sufficiently screened from areas to the north. We can probably we'll skip that one. I'm already up to, I have 10 minutes, remember? So we're at 3 now. Here we are in the southeast corner. Now, note that I didn't move him. Even though I have certain points modeled here, I've looked at a lot more than what is presented. We're trying to provide a concise report and narrative here. Just because we don't show a truck over here doesn't mean that there's issues that result in C. The focus of this receptor here is to look at our apartments and residences to the south. So what I wanted to confirm here is that the barrier was sufficiently long enough to not result in a looping around. And you can see that there is spillage over in this direction where the barrier is not present, but that when the barrier is present, that the sound has to go up and over it, and that it ends up having a peak somewhere in the upper rear of the backyard. Locations D and E, again, 49 and 38. The color contours, I guess I skipped over this again in my haste, but what we're looking at here is the color contours are representative of 5 feet above grade, so ear height. And so that disconnects from these upper story receptors, but is more visually understanding because as you were to walk anywhere around, even in the lulls of the property, that is more of the more accurate modeling of what you would expect to hear as a result of this scenario that we're showing here. And then lastly, we bring it down to the southwest corner here. And more of the same. So we see that the barrier is doing its job here to sufficiently reduce this truck court operation in the southwest corner to D&E, maximum levels of 46 and 47. And I didn't specify earlier, but this is now being modeled as a source strength of 79 at 50 feet. And that's 5 dB higher than the driving truck. And that's based on the collection of backup alarm, coupling to coupling, air brakes, those really short duration, but still high level. And a lot of those that we're talking about are actually considered impulsive, which I don't want to derail our progress here because we're doing great. They actually have more permissive limits that go to impulsive sounds. However, the caveat is if they occur more than 4 times in a given hour during the night, that the 50 applies again. So I didn't even want to bother with that sidebar if it brings us back to here, because in the odd chance that this might occur more than 4 times in an hour, I don't believe it is based on the traffic counts and the traffic study that I've reviewed, but just to put that additional level of ease in the board's mind. So again, here we have a little bit of a hot spot of 52 in the back here, but that doesn't come anywhere near where these folks are actually sleeping. And so we fully comply by a sufficient margin, and I find this approach to be successful to meet the local and state ordinance. That's the summary of everything. Is we've looked at maximum levels that occur around the site, we looked at truck operations around the site, and we showed that you could have any sort of combination of different things occurring here, and that no matter what that element might be at that given time, that we have a mitigation strategy in place to control that to meet our local and state ordinance.
So, Mr. Miller?
Questions?
It feels like that's a good
I know,
pause. Is that a good pause?
Yes, I've said what I feel is most important.
Not going home.
So just
Remain available.
procedurally, you haven't concluded.
Nope.
You've just given us facts for the
Taking
most
a breath.
part, right?
Yes.
And the board probably has some questions. We haven't opened it up to the public. But what I want to do is have our consultant give us his perspective while we have your testimony right in our head.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
Matt?
Chairman. So I don't want to rehash I issued 2 letters to the board for their review, and I'm going to just go from Mr. Mueller's evaluation. Part of my concern before Ostergaard was involved were twofold. One is making sure that the acoustical evaluation did encompass everything that could potentially happen on the site. And 2, where the code was being evaluated. As the board's aware, there was a lot of discussion as to where the code applies. And I think that I want just one little clarification from Mr. Mueller on just making sure, in all of his figures, in that area on the southeast property line, what he refers to as D and E, right, Ben?
Yes.
So there are areas there where the code during the nighttime hours is clear that will be exceeded in close proximity to the site along the property line, but that it will be just under the limits of the code at the actual dwellings, at the houses.
Correct.
And one of the things I want just a clarification on, and I know because you went fast, the first figure you showed that had the purple all the way around it, that was just a truck movement, correct?
Correct.
And then the other 4 you showed was a maximum operation. In your report, you referred to it as a short duration high sound level.
Yes.
Can you what's included in that?
Okay, so, and this is more shop for acousticians here, but in our series of measurements and surveys, we have typified a backup alarm and a coupled decoupling and air brake. Air brake is high frequency, air release. Coupled decoupling is more low frequency clink, and then backup alarms can vary, but your tonal one, which is everyone is most used to, is about 1,000 hertz, and then even the new modern broadband, which is more of a shusher, is a little bit more of a spread on frequencies there. But what I do to simplify things on my end, limit the number of models that we show, is I have taken all those different activities, and as dynamic or as diverse as they are, I've grabbed the highest level in each octave band so that I model, it's corny, but it's a monster truck. It's a Frankenstein source that we stitch together to allow me to do 4 models and say I'm confident that any of these entities can occur. The other thing just to point out, which we haven't gotten into, but it is in the report, is that I'm modeling this at a height of 8 feet above grade. Coupling to coupling is generally at 4 feet. Backup alarm might even be at 3 feet. Air brake, again, 3 feet. So I'm being conservative by taking this high level and modeling at a height that it's not going to occur. So again, I am softening the results here, but again, still confident that we're reaching our threshold.
So just in that, you're talking about your source height is at 8 feet.
Correct.
The source height you're using for your tractor trailer, is that also 8 feet?
It is also at 8 feet, and that is selected because of a combination of the exhaust stacks, which used to be high up. Now we have a series of trucks that have them low, and that the engine is at 4 feet. So 12 plus 4 divided by 2 is 8. And again, even though the stacks are at 12 foot, they're not the dominant noise source for a low-speed truck traversing the site. And so that height, again, is purposeful to really stress the limits of the barriers and berms that are proposed.
Okay. and then when you did your barrier calculations, you did a receiver for a truck at 12 feet, second story window.
Not truck, the A through E are all at a second story receptor, 15 feet above grade.
15 feet, okay. Because you had said before that those sound contours are at 5-foot elevation.
Correct. So we're looking visually at a 5-foot height slice across here, but for A through E, in our table over here, it's actually higher up. And you can see that clearly here with location E showing levels of 47, but meanwhile, the contours that are near it are not.
I see. So that explains, so if you look at the colors, gray is 50 dB. So it seems like the houses are in the gray contour, but the numerical values on the lower left hand of his chart are below 50 dB, because what he's calculated, if I understand you, Ben, and correct me if I'm wrong, what he's presented in the actual second story window is not what's being shown on the graph. So if you're at 5 feet, go by the colors. If you're in the second story window, you go by the chart, the table, I'm sorry. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's one of the questions I had, is why the numbers didn't jive with the colors. Okay.
My attempt to limit the number of iterations and presentation that we do, because we do a lot of projects, we try to be as concise in a package to get the most information across in as few.
I get you, but when
slides.
colors and numbers don't line up, my whole brain lights up.
Understood. Understood.
Okay. All right.
If the narrative of the report steps through it with more care,
I just want
but
to get
yes,
I want to get on the record.
we're speed racing here.
Fair enough. Okay. I still think that to answer, especially Mr. Pep's question about what's the dynamic difference, absolutely you're correct. The applicant is bound to 50 dBA. That is what they're allowed to do. But it would be good to know how loud is that. Is it very loud? Is it going to get much louder than what they experience now? The difference, the other nice part about doing ambient measurements is that I would assume that the dominant noise source is Route 33. So you're going to have sounds that are going to be typical for what you expect at the site. That's not always the case. If you have a highway that's your existing noise source and you're introducing something that's not highway noise, then you now have a character difference. But in this case, the dominant noise source is trucks, where the dominant noise source is cars on Route 33. I just want you to, and this is my last question before we open to is about the thing that makes warehouses at night the most challenging from an acoustic standpoint are backup alarms. If you could just explain a little bit as to why backup alarms are so annoying and whether you feel that they're going to meet the code.
Sure. So we do confirm that they're going to meet the code through our model here. Based on my experience, and Matt, you might corroborate this, but while backup alarms are very poignant in our mind, I've experienced in reality that about a third of the trucks in truck courts have a beeper backup alarm that we're very used to. About a third of them have the more modern shusher, which is instead of, okay, I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole, but backup alarms are at 1,000 hertz. That's where we hear best, even as we age and our hearing starts to degrade. So that is exactly why they produce 1,000 hertz, because they need to be audible for safety reasons. So we see a third of trucks with that. We see a third of trucks with the more modern backup alarm, which instead of putting all that energy in one frequency, it spreads it into a couple. It's less irritable. It is just as noticeable. And so we see that on a lot of trucks. And then about a third of trucks don't have backup alarms. So contrary to our belief, it's not like the smoke detector in a plane where if you don't have one, you're violating a code. The ordinance regarding whether you need to have a backup alarm is really derived from the construction backup alarm section, and those vehicles are required to. When trucks came along, it was a good idea to do that, and then I do believe there might be a law then of not tampering with one that is already installed, but not all trucks need to have it. And so because we see a wide variety of vendors being individual truck owners, it's a matter of preference, how they see fit. There are still safety rules that apply within the truck court that must be followed, and the goal is to not have anyone be injured. With those being the case, we don't expect every truck here to have a beeper. We've shown in a model that if that were the case, that we would be okay. But again, in reality, about 2/3 of the vehicles that will be on site will not exhibit the levels that we've shown here. We will see, and I'd offer up, I don't want to offer for my client here, but if we have something like a yard tractor on site, which are these yard hostler, yard jockey, they have 1,000 names, but they're the little cab and they move trailers within the site. Those we have complete freedom to ensure that it has a quiet backup alarm on it because it's going to live in site and be owned and operated by the tenant, even though they're not known. So I always recommend that if they're in site, that we would put that in. So it's a condition of approval. It's $130. It's the cheapest fix we could do. What we don't have the authority to do is to command outside vendors to have certain equipment installed or not installed. So I have not yet had success with enforcing that. But I do see that, again, not everyone has what we deem as the most annoying backup alarm.
And you, just previously, I think 2 meetings ago, we agreed that it would be an alternative energy vehicle and it would not have a backup. There would be one on site. We called it I think we called it a pony or a donkey. There would be one
Mule.
on site.
Yeah.
Mule. Switcher.
Switcher. Terminal tractor is the technical term.
Matt, anything else?
I'm sorry, I do have one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
No, but by the way, so when you're done with your next question, my next question to you is going to be, do you have a conclusion or an evaluation of what we've heard?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you go back one figure to page 9? Yeah, that's it. So just, I mean, I know that the applicant has already stipulated they would purchase those residential properties or those residential buildings. But just to caution the board that, you know, if those are houses and they remain houses, that there will be noise violations in that structure, on those structures in that area of the property. So just to point that out.
And I'm glad you touched on that because I know before I got up, we had discussions about that, of whether the board can consider that. So just to put your mind at ease though, while we're proposing a scenario here, this isn't a problem until it's a reality. And so in my opinion, the board has jurisdiction to vote on this, you know, assuming that these properties will be purchased, even though you can't make it a condition of approval. Because until this happens and houses are here, this is not a scenario that is going to be a reality. So the process of purchasing those and construction, they're all going to line up, and by the time it's done, these won't be receptors. But the code is in perpetuity, whether you approve this or deny it. And so if there are houses there, when we get to the stage, we're on the hook for that.
Just to clarify, this is showing 50 in the yard of D&E, but your testimony is on the second story of D&E, it is below 50.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Just want to
Correct. It ties back into the guidelines that discuss that the interpretation of the at or within the property line. We've seen scenarios where we have a flag lot, and that property, while it's still the property line, goes off into nowhere. My guidance here, as an acquisition, is protect the public, and so my belief is that the layout and everything we propose here tonight certainly does that, and that having a certain blip in exceedance of that and an area where no one is going to be during the nighttime hours is just the nature of events, and that this is what is occurring throughout the state. But what we're trying to provide is an approach that covers as much of it as we can to provide a compatible uses here.
Matt?
Yeah, okay. So in the original evaluation, I did prepare a lengthy letter. I had several concerns about that that agreed with many of the questions that the board had raised. Ostergaard did address all of those concerns. There are still some areas that I do think the board needs to take really take some guidance on. And Mr. Mueller does say that the DEP has provided guidance on where a code is applied. But it does say that a code applies at or within the property line of an affected person, and the real property line is defined on the model ordinance as the vertical or horizontal plane dividing two parcels. So just so I don't want to kind of say, well, in this case, you know, we want to set a precedent where we're just going to let them creep in just a little bit because it's a little bit over at the property line. That being said, realistically, you have a 16-foot high noise barrier on the southeast property and a rather large berm on the northwest property. logistically speaking, there is a limit as to what a barrier can do. You know, if you've lived in Jersey for more than about an hour, you've seen highway noise barriers everywhere. The truth of the matter is there's been so much study to say that you couldn't go higher if you wanted to, because at some point you hit a realistic limit. The example I like to do is we turn all the lights off and we had just a light bulb on the desk and you put a piece of cardboard in front of you, there still would be light behind you. And no matter how big you make that, there's still light behind you. Well, that's the same thing with noise barriers. I think that this design is realistically about as high as they're going to get, with the exception of the 8-foot high on the driveway, and I think that might be a safety issue with sight triangles. I would defer to the engineer on that. And there will be areas on that southeast property line at those residentials that will exceed the code for periods of time. It doesn't appear to me that the study indicates that there's going to be a continuous noise that would exceed at night based upon these proposed, but there is likely to be times when trucks are driving in and around those sections of the site. And if I'm going too fast, my apologies. And if I do this doesn't help the record at all. I know. Then that the code would be exceeded. And it's not really I don't like personally the language of, you know, well, no one's going to be on the property at night. Really? I mean, if they own the property and they live on the property, they can certainly be there. So I'm not sure why that language is the way it is. But that's the only thing I would say I would caution the board. It is my recommendation that if this board does see this to be approved, that they do a set of post-installation noise measurements at the property lines and at the nearest structure. Obviously, I'm not going to recommend we do them at the second-story window, but they do need to be done. Because there's been such an emphasis on the house and the property line, I think that data needs to be done. If they make, you know, again, with the property lines, if they have they have decided they are going to purchase those houses, however you can find a way to guarantee that would be good as well. I'll defer. Thank you.
Okay, so we heard a question from Chris that the applicant picked up on, which is, what's the ambient noise coming from Route 33? It's some vehicular noise, so I think that was something that got the board and the applicant's curiosity. Do you find value in having the applicant take a look at that also to see where that factors in?
I certainly think, you know, we're coming back and talking about it anyway. It's certainly, the way that existing site is logistically laid out, it's very easy to take a sound level meter and change it to a light pole and figure out what the existing sound levels are, especially if you do one on the northwest corner and at the southeast or the south corner as well, and determine what are those existing sound levels. It will certainly answer the question Mr. Pepp had asked and the resident, am I going to hear this? The only way to really objectively answer that is to, well, how loud is it now? Without that, then it's nothing than, you know, Mr. Mueller's opinion and my opinion, well, you know, you're going to hear it, but it's going to be under the code. They've demonstrated that, for all intents and purposes, they will meet the limits of the code. But the only way to answer that question would be to make the measurements.
Okay. All right.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I think it was Mr. Zeiner posed a question of the witness previously that, okay, we do post-installation noise testing. What if it doesn't comply? What do you do?
That's on them. I don't, the truth is, once the barriers are up and the site is operating, it would be very difficult to make taller walls. At that point, we're relying on the expert witness testimony. I can tell you that.
So would it require a change in operations?
That would probably be the only realistic solution to make it so it's daytime operations only.
I thought you were going to say, well, then you could add a wall in that corner closest to home A. I'm not suggesting.
I see what you're saying.
I thought you were going to go there.
I think, look, the reality is that well-constructed earth berms, believe it or not, actually provide better attenuation.
Makes perfect sense.
Than a wall. The diffraction over the top, because it's a large round surface, works better than the hard top of a wall. And that's been proven many, many times. I doubt that adding a wall on top of the berm would do any more realistically, provided that it's installed properly. And I think that this design will do that. We could add from a post installation, we could do more, the 8-foot high wall could be made higher. But again, now you're taking walls out, changing footings, and putting new ones in. The footings for these barriers, even the 8-foot high, might go down 10, 12 feet. So it's a sizable concrete piling that just can't, we're just gonna pull it out and put a new one in. It would be very, very logistically challenging. So that's why I think, with these types of things, these questions about the board has to take into consideration, is it gonna be an impact, will it meet the code? Something we have to consider now.
So that my suggestion on this interesting question, and thanks for bringing that back up, Mike, is that since there will be a moment in time between now and the next meeting when you'll look at that ambient noise, I would like both consultants to think about, okay, 2 years from now, this thing's up and running, and the measurement at home A, darn, it's 62. And everyone is like, what the heck, the science? Think about what could be done down the road to react to that.
Mr. Chair, it's not tonight to present. We have, because that was in the report, we prepared for it, but I don't want to start that this evening, but let's just call it, it's all operations based, but there's tools that we can put before the board.
Okay, and if the board were inclined to approve this, they would be conditions that would be post-approval conditions that there would be some monitoring that would have to take place through the township, cooperation with the applicant or the owner. Okay, so we'll keep that as a conversation for the next time.
But there are some good tools.
Okay, great, good to hear it. I just one last thought. So we talk about that that 50 is the number we focused on for E and D and E, but didn't you say that during the day it's 65?
Correct.
So just so I can get, don't have to worry about this anymore. Where is the 65 line at D and E?
That's this bright red, and that doesn't ever leave the property.
Okay, so the daytime allowance would be 65, so in the daytime...
For my daytime only projects, we traditionally wouldn't propose a barrier or berm.
Okay, so the effect on D and E to get to 50 is at night, it's not a daytime thing.
Correct.
I get it,
And
sleeping's important, I just wanted to understand.
I did state earlier, but because we're seeking approval for a prospective 24-hour use,
right.
It doesn't matter day or night. These are the emissions that would occur with truck activity on site. So.
Got it. You took that conservative approach, I hear you. Okay, so unless there's any other questions from the board, Mr. Pape, we have two choices, and I'm not suggesting, I'm just talking out loud. One choice is to open it up to the public to ask any questions based on what we've heard so far, knowing that there's going to be supplemental information at the next meeting, and the public would have another opportunity, as opposed to just not opening it up at this point to the public.
I would defer to you, but it would be, I think it would be a little awkward for examination of the witness in the middle of his testimony. There's more to come, and he'd be testifying on something new to answer a question. I don't want to be rude to anyone, but I don't think that examination in the middle of his testimony is appropriate.
So I'm going to throw a hybrid. I'm not going to suggest your consultant is going to answer anything. I'm going to ask the public if they would like to put their questions on the table so that at least you have a moment to hear them and they don't lose their thoughts.
I think that's excellent.
Okay, so let's open it up to questions, but with no expectation of answers. I just don't want the folks in the public to lose their thoughts.
Okay.
And go ahead, your name and address again, please.
Anthony Cipriano, 21 Arrowhead Way. Thank you for your testimony. Do appreciate the time, and this presentation, as the board would agree, was significantly more robust than the previous testimony. So, a couple things. A, I want to offer and cooperate my property. You could do any type of testing day or night, call me, email me. We'll let you come and do any type of test you want to perform. Both second story, indoors, outdoors, property line. I think it's important where the property line is, we do have a swing set there and we do spend a lot of time there. And that's opposite of our well and sewer and septic tank. So there's a lot of activity and a potential pool's gonna go in that back corner in the future. So there is gonna be a lot of noise generated. That wasn't a question. My question is, we're almost 2 years into this, and why haven't we yet considered a smaller footprint? You know, as we continue down, obviously it's 10, 15, whatever the $1 million are on their side, but you're saying you don't need to go and exceed the standards, you only need to meet the standard, yet you're seeking C variance relief. And if you remove the C variance relief, then all you have to do is meet the standard, because then you don't have to worry about the public detriment. So my question is, why don't we consider something smaller? I think that may be in the better interest of all parties. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next member of the public, please. Name and address again, please. I know you just told us
No,
before.
it's all right. Mike Oliu, 7 Indian Path. First, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to this gentleman or to the board when I was trying to, I just needed to know where everything was located.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that.
All right. Although it didn't have to do with sound, it did come up that cut drawings were requested so you can find out where in a house what you're going to see. If I'm not mistaken, the first or second meeting, they were requested.
And we heard the testimony on that back then.
Okay, then they're being requested again? So does that mean they're available or they're not available?
You say it was requested again, and the applicant said they'll take a fresh look at it.
We did provide them, we cut
You
you.
did, okay.
Yeah, I thought the applicant was quite polite by not saying, hey, what the heck, we did
No,
this.
I didn't realize that, that's fine. Now, 49 was described as a humming refrigerator, correct?
Well, just to be fair, this is an opportunity for you to throw questions on the table, not necessarily for anyone to answer.
Okay. A refrigerator, I'm not gonna hear from there, okay? Why do I hear cars and trucks from Route 33 right in front of that site? And if that's the case, won't I still hear trucks and cars in their facility? That's a question that you can answer later on. What is the penalty, I think it was somewhat addressed, if there's a noise problem? So if I'm sitting out on my deck having some friends over and it's 10 o'clock at night and I hear trucks going on, am I supposed to call the cops? Do I call the state police? I don't have a meter, but if I can hear it, I shouldn't be hearing it because it's not a refrigerator. So what happens? And if the state troopers come out and they happen to have a meter in their car and they measure it and they say, wow, that is over the limit, is there a fine in place? I mean, if they just say, hey guys, keep it quiet, and the next week it happens again, keep it quiet, and then at some point, there has to be a penalty when they do exceed the noise, and that should be in place. And it shouldn't be a warning, because the warning is from the beginning, that you're not supposed to do it. There should be a penalty, a firm penalty in place. So, that's my question and statement.
Thanks for putting it on the
Thank you.
table. All right, anyone else? Name and address again, please.
Brian Scott, 19 Arrowhead Way. Just, can we go back to the original one with the purple around the building? So my first question is kind of to both experts, and again, I do thank you guys all for your time, you have the board as well. I believe you just answered the question about the DBA level is at our property lines versus our residences. I just want to make sure we clarify that next meeting, that we're going by the property line versus the house. You mentioned something about the windows being opened or closed and there being a 10 dBA level difference. What is our model anticipating? Because on a winter day, is this what I'm looking at? On a summer day, is that coming through my back screen door? What time is night and day in these dBA levels? what is a DBA level of alarm? I think we talked about trucks and clinks and this and that, but what is it from that beeping alarm? You mentioned a truck is 74 dBA. Is that accelerating, decelerating, Jake braking, turbochargers? What is 74 dBA? Because he said voices are 68, 65, 63. I mean, a truck is far louder than that, and we all know that. So 74 to me just seems a little off. A quick search, it looked closer to 100 on some vehicles. Two more questions here. If we install the meters and we do go over the levels, same as the other gentleman, what's the ramifications, what's the fixes? Because we can't just close the building, I'm assuming. It's gonna be a pretty substantial issue there. Obviously, daytime hours is maybe on the table as a condition of this entire, approval. We're not gonna do a 24-hour location here, maybe we do a daytime only fix. And lastly is, based on this image, A is my neighbor Anthony. My house is right next door. The gray goes right to my back door, which is why I asked about the summertime and the wintertime, because I do believe you said gray is 50, and I believe my property line is right about here. There's a huge swath that comes right to my living room. So that's a major concern of mine, because I do hear 33. I understand I bought a house in that area. 33 is sometimes a drone, sometimes a motorcycle, sometimes a truck decelerating. But if I'm getting a constant 50 dB from the site operating, to me that's going to be pretty detrimental to my property value, everyday living, family life, outdoor living, and it's a very major concern that I think over the last 16, 18 months it is really not being addressed on the resident side. And it's starting to irritate us that they continue to push and push and push for this size warehouse, and they're not taking any of our considerations into effect. They're just trying to make as much money as they can, push the limits. Never once do they come in and say, here you go, everything is in line with what we set in place as a board. We have nothing to go against. I just find it unfeasible that we have to continuously go back and forth to push the levels and kind of just be, ball about it. It's just frustrating at this point that they have zero disregard, for all the neighboring, sites in this area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate the members of the public indulging us with questions so that the applicant has an opportunity to consider this when they come back and perhaps provide adequate answers. Before we wrap up, anything further from the applicant this evening?
I think we're concluded this evening. We'll be prepared to return with Ben and the professional team. I'll review with Ben and our client what additional testing, if any, there will be, and I'll provide that to you. If there is additional testing, we'll reach out to Mr. Morello for guidance.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you coordinated that so that there's no discussion of you should have tested here or there or et cetera. Okay.
What?
When are we carrying this to?
We're respectfully asking that April's not available to us. Respectfully asking that you carry us to May 8th. And that gives us the time to do what needs to be done.
Matt, does that work with you?
Works for me.
You're good? Okay.
And
Okay,
we
Matt,
trust
I'll ask you.
you.
Yeah, all right, I'll ask you. Oh, God. Good, now I'm feeling
Nice to
good.
meet you.
See, I take your chair.
Now, McKinley, I'm forced to ask you, are you okay?
I'm absolutely available.
Excellent. All right, thank you.
And we ran through our professionals too.
Okay. Anything further from the board before we conclude this for the evening? Okay. Thanks,
If
everybody.
that's it, then we need to announce that this matter is being carried to May 8th, 2024 at 7:30 PM in this same room. There will not be any further notice.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you all.
Have a good night. All right, looking at our agenda, there's nothing listed for other business. Daniel, is there anything else we need to focus on? Okay, I just, on our next meeting is April, since we likely, this won't be up before us, and then the one we talked about at the beginning of the evening will probably take more than April to get their ducks in order. What's our agenda for April at this point?
As of right now, we do have an ordinance amendment that we were going to be looking at, so we may have an administrative meeting if anybody's available, maybe we can talk about changing it.
Yeah, talk to me about that. We might do that as a Zoom at like a 4 o'clock in the afternoon kind of thing.
Oh, that would be great.
And you can dial in from parts unknown.
Great.
I'll of course provide whatever notice.
Do you-
We may be able to do an administrative.
Okay, all right, we'll go for that.
4:30?
4:30, okay, all right, keep that in mind, 4:30 is the ask. All right, seeing nothing else, Chris makes a motion to adjourn. I do. And I'm seconding, all in favor, aye. We are adjourned, thank you, everybody.